I thought I knew her. Every night we shared a bed, but she was sharing herself with someone else. The late-night calls, the mysterious gifts, I ignored them. Until I followed her. I saw them together, laughing at a restaurant we once loved. The betrayal hit me like a train. How could she? How could I be so blind? My world shattered in a single moment. I was a fool, and now there's no turning back. Families can be strange. No two families are alike. Each one is special because of the different people, ages, and stories. My family is like that too. My name is Harry, and I am the middle child in what you might call a regular family. There's my mom, Martha, my dad, Roger, and my two siblings. My older brother, Greg, is big and strong, just like our dad. My younger sister, Joan, is small and gentle, like our mom. I look different from both of them. I have sandy brown hair, and I am slim. When Greg picked on me, Dad would just laugh and say I needed to be stronger. He often said that life isn't fair. Growing up, we did fun things like having picnics and visiting parks. I always wore Greg's old clothes, even if they did not fit well. My mom bought me belts and suspenders to hold them up, but I still felt out of place. Greg and Joan often got new clothes, while I had to manage with what I had. Dad was usually stricter with me than with the others. Greg was a lot like him, and Joan was often his favorite. Sometimes Dad would call me the mistake. As I grew into a teenager, it felt like my family didn't mind if I missed out on activities or stayed home by myself. Mom was sometimes worried, but then Dad would repeat his line about life being unfair, and I would feel ignored. The one good thing about being alone so much was that I learned a lot. I studied hard and became interested in science and technology. I saved enough money from my allowance and small jobs to build my own computer. I bought parts from different places and figured out how to put them together. My studies became a way to escape my troubles at home. I learned about subjects like physics, geography, biology, chemistry, and history. I also studied English, German, and Spanish. I absorbed everything like a sponge during the hours I spent alone in my room. I was a straight-A student, and my teachers praised me in their reports, even though it felt like my parents didn't pay much attention. Mom would sometimes give me a smile and say, "Well done," while Dad would just grunt. Greg teased me for being a nerd, even though he barely passed his math classes. In later years of high school, Greg became rougher and hit me more, saying it was just brotherly love. Dad seemed to support him. Joan laughed at my troubles, but she didn't help me. One time, Mom found me using an ice pack on a bruise on my side. She held the ice there for a few minutes while telling me not to upset Greg. "But Mom, I don't do anything. I try to stay away from him, but he always hits me when I walk by," I said sadly. "Dad supports this, and Greg bullies me. It feels like I belong to a different family." Mom looked like she wanted to say something, but didn't. Instead, she said, "I'll talk to your dad and brother about this. They don't understand you, I guess, since you don't look like them." A few days later, Mom must have talked to them because Greg started coming into my room while I slept. He would punch me in the stomach. Dad was quiet about it, but his sneer and smile spoke volumes. I always had bruises under clothes that were too tight for me. I tried hard to cover them up at school, but one day during gym class, I was running when someone played a trick and threw a metal bar in front of me. I tripped and fell, cutting my arm. I went to the school nurse, an older woman named Mrs. Erskine. She asked me to take off my shirt so she could clean my cut. "Harry, it's okay," she said. "I've raised 3 boys. I've seen it all. We need to clean this cut so it doesn't get infected." I hesitated, but I took off my shirt, hoping Mrs. Erskine wouldn't see the fresh bruises on my body from Greg. After a few minutes, I felt a little better. The cut hurt a lot, but she treated it and wrapped a bandage around it tightly. When she finished, I turned to put my shirt back on, but Mrs. Erskine saw a big bruise on my back. "Harry," she said, surprised, "are you okay?" I tried to brush it off, knowing that in my family, telling on someone was not cool. "I'm fine, Mrs. E. I must have fallen and didn't realize how badly I hurt myself." She didn't look convinced, but didn't push me. Instead, she quietly told the other teachers that she thought someone was hurting me, so they should keep an eye on me. The teachers watched me closely. They figured out that I wasn't bullied at school, and since I had no friends outside of school, they thought my problems came from home. They couldn't ask me directly, but they helped me apply to several colleges that were a few hours away, hoping to get me away from my parents. They guided me on my choices, and I realized I wanted to study chemistry. My science teachers helped me apply for a scholarship, giving me a chance for a better future. Taking a chance, my favorite science teacher, Mr. Daniels, called my parents and set up a meeting about the scholarship. They came to school a week before it was due, and 5 of us sat in the room. Mr. Daniels, the principal, Mr. McDonald, my parents, and I don't think you see how great this chance is for Harry, Mr. Daniels said. He is one of the best students we've had in years. He could get a full scholarship to study at university. Mr. Daniels had been talking to my parents for almost 20 minutes. That's nice, my dad said. But like I said before, I'm not paying for him to go study. He needs to get a job and learn his place in life. Mr. McDonald spoke up. Mr. Other, what Mr. Daniels means is that the scholarship is fully paid for, so you won't have to spend anything. My dad was surprised, but found another reason quickly. Well, all these schools are out of town, so he would have nowhere to live, and I won't pay for that either. We have a plan for that, Mr. Other, Mr. Daniels replied. I have a cousin who runs a business close to the university. He needs someone to help clean and organize his warehouse. It's not fancy work, he laughed. It can be tough and a bit messy, but it will pay enough for Harry to live near the university and take care of basic needs like food and books. I was surprised earlier when Mr. Daniels told me about the job with his cousin. He said I would help with research and work in a lab, similar to the chemistry I would study. He looked at me, winked, and shook his head a little. I understood the hint and stayed quiet. My dad thought about it for a moment. Well, as long as I don't have to pay. He learns hard work and it gets him out of my house. Great, said Mr. McDonald, getting eager before my dad could change his mind. I have the papers ready for you to sign. It took another hour, but in the end we signed everything and went home. I was amazed when Mr. Daniels pulled me out of class 2 weeks later and handed me a big stack of envelopes. You're all set. The admissions board has accepted your scholarship, and my cousin Norman is excited to meet you over the holidays before university starts and to help you get ready. Mr. Daniels, I don't know what to say. Just remember me when you do. Well, he paused. Harry, you are going to do well in whatever you choose. You are smart. You work hard and you care about others. All the teachers at school have known what was happening at home for a while. I wanted to explain my family, but Mr. Daniels held up his hand. It's okay, he said. You don't need to explain or defend anyone. We just want to help. We know you're a bright star, and we want to make sure you shine. School ended for the year like it does in Australia. I finished 3rd in the school rankings. I would have tied for 1st if my parents had let me join 2 extra credit trips, but they said no again. After school, Mr. Daniels picked me up to show me my new job. On the way, he told me to call him Jack since he was no longer my teacher. We drove to the next city, which took a little over an hour. He introduced me to a man named Norman and helped me find an apartment. The trip lasted 3 great days where I talked to Jack and Norman like friends. They listened to me and explained what I would be doing. Norman had talked to someone, and I could choose between 2 one-bedroom flats, one close to school and the other closer to work. I chose the one near my job, on the 1st floor of an older but nice building. The building manager was a kind, older man who said I could call him for help if I needed it. On the way back, Jack and I talked about my future, and I felt excited to see that there might be more to life than feeling overlooked at home. The night before I left, my mother came in with many boxes to help me pack. Mom, I can't take all this on the bus, I said. It's okay, dear, she replied. I talked to your father, and I will take you in these boxes in his truck tomorrow. We can do it all in one trip. Mom looked like she might cry when she came over and gave me the biggest hug ever. But as she hugged me, her feelings took over and she began to tear up. Oh, Harry, my dear Harry, you deserve so much more. I wish I could do more for you, but I have a gift, Mom said. She left the room and soon came back with a small box. Inside was a beautiful notebook and what looked like a nice pen. I planned to use the notebook to write down my thoughts and ideas in the future, and I would keep the pen on my desk. Don't tell your father, she whispered, but I wanted you to have something just for yourself. She paused, looking at me with tears still in her eyes. I want you to know how much I care about you. Then she left the room, and I could hear her sniffing as she wiped her eyes. At dinner that night, not much was said. Joan gave me a cold look and said, "Don't be more of a loser than you already are," before turning back to her phone. Dad sneered, "I'll find another big brother to look after you." I thought this was just an empty threat since he didn't seem to know anyone outside our town. "Just try not to embarrass our family more than you already have," he added. Mom didn't say anything, but she looked at me with the saddest eyes I had ever seen. Later that night, just before midnight, Greg came into my room and started pushing me around. I couldn't fight back, and he laughed as he left, saying, "This is to remind you who's in charge." I couldn't say I felt sad about leaving that place. The next year was wonderful. I began learning new things in chemistry at university. I also worked with Norman, using what I was learning. It felt good to study what I loved, and I was finally earning my own money. Being away from my family made me feel free, and I enjoyed it. Jack visited often to hang out. He talked a lot with Norman and me, and it seemed like he liked spending time with me. To me, he was the big brother I always wished Greg could be. I saved most of my money since I didn't go out much, and when I had enough, Jack helped me pick out a car. We talked about girls, a topic I was too shy to think about, and we just enjoyed each other's company. But there was one downside. Now that I had my car, I had to go to my parents' house for lunch one Sunday each month. Dad insisted on these family gatherings. Since I moved out, Sunday lunch had changed. With me gone, my family felt lighter, and they often had new people over. It was almost funny how everyone acted relieved that I wasn't around. During these lunches, everyone gave me strange looks, even though I was supposed to be there. So I would sit quietly in the corner, waiting for the afternoon to end so I could go back to my life. Many of Dad's workers were there too, and I didn't like being alone with them. But I did what was expected. It was during this time away, while learning and studying, that I made a big discovery. I found a way to make some types of plastic stronger and longer lasting. But when I added a common safe substance, the plastic would start to break down into its basic parts in just a few days. When I told my coworker Norman about this, he looked shocked. "You're incredible, Harry. This could change how we use plastic everywhere and really help the planet," he said, full of excitement. Over the next week, we kept working in the lab to show that my idea was working. One day, while we were in his office, Jack walked in after school. We filled him in on what was happening. "Harry, there are some important things that Norman and I need to talk to you about. If we handle this well, your discovery could make you famous." In the following weeks, Jack and Norman helped me apply for a patent so that my idea would be protected. Right before school ended, I turned 18, which meant I didn't have to involve my parents. Jack also helped me make an agreement with Norman to start a new business that would produce the plastic compound. Jack got a small share of the business. In just 6 months, I went from being a broke college student to earning what some managers make in a whole year. I still didn't have much of a social life. Most of my time was spent on school and work with a few visits to my parents. But I did treat myself a bit. First, I took out a loan to buy an apartment instead of renting one. Jack helped me find a place, and we went through the buying process together. It was a bit far away, so I needed a reliable car instead of my old 1982 green Mazda 323, which kept breaking down. While we looked at some options, I spotted my dream car. It was a used 2008 Mustang in great condition, with low mileage and a nice suspension upgrade. I had to pay a bit more for insurance because I was under 25, but it felt worth it. When I got inside and started it up, the engine purred and felt ready to drive. Most Saturday afternoons, you could find me in the parking lot washing and shining it up for the next ride. I also decided to update my personal style. I bought clothes that actually fit me, since I have a slim build from a fast metabolism. I started to see myself as more than just my older brother's nerdy little brother. The next time I visited my parents for lunch, I enjoyed a great drive down the highway in my Mustang and attracted a little attention. As I pulled into their driveway, the loud engine caught some people's notice, including my sister Joan. "Hey, buddy. This is a private family gathering," she said, stopping short as if she was seeing me for the first time. "Hey, sis. It's just your nerdy older brother back for lunch." She didn't know how to respond at first, but soon a couple of her friends came over to ask about the car and who I was. They couldn't believe I was Joan's older brother or that I owned such a nice car. It felt nice to be the center of attention. I couldn't help but smile. My mom saw me and almost cried when she noticed my new clothes and my happy face. She gave me a big hug. Dad and Greg just looked at me like they usually did. Dad seemed upset, and Greg looked angry. After that, Dad, Greg, and Joan mostly stayed quiet around me. They only said a few mean things, but they listened to everything I said. Mom wanted to hear all the details. "No, Mom, I'm still your Harry. I just have some good luck," I told her. I also reminded her that she wouldn't leave me alone since that hug a few months ago. I found an idea that could really help people. Jack and Norman are helping me get a patent for it. A patent means people will have to pay me if they want to use my idea. Mom was amazed. But that's not everything. Norman and I started a new company to make the things my patent covers. He gave me a 30% share of the company. He has 30% too. We also gave Jack a small part, and some investors hold the rest. It seems like it will be a big success. Dad looked grumpy. I think he wanted to say something, but he stayed quiet. For the first time, Greg had nothing to say. Right now, I'm only making a little money, but in a couple of years I could have a lot. Plus, I will get to travel to exciting places for research. For the first time, my parents didn't know what to say, and my family was quiet. I didn't get the praise I received from Jack, but they weren't saying the usual rude things either. That week, I went back to work and school feeling cheerful. I smiled all the time. Each month, I joined my parents for lunch, and things felt different. Sure, Joan, Greg, and Dad still didn't talk to me much, but Mom and some family friends seemed interested in what I was doing. Then one Sunday, I showed up, and Mom looked nervous. I hugged her, greeted my siblings and Dad without much warmth, and went to say hi to the guests. Mom and Dad always invited different people over on Sundays, and today was no different. I chatted for a bit, grabbed a plate of food, and sat in my usual quiet spot to enjoy some BBQ sausages, potato salad, and rolls while watching everyone. I wasn't as shy as before, but I still didn't quite fit in with this crowd, especially with my parents' friends. Then I heard someone say hi. "Mind if I sit here?" It felt like I had heard the sweetest voice. I looked up, and there she was. If I thought my Mustang was nice, this girl made it look plain. She was tall and slim, almost 6 feet. She had long, soft brown hair that flowed down to her waist. Her figure was slim, and she had a nice shape under her jeans. Her face was cute. She had big brown eyes, a small nose, and soft lips. She wore large glasses that made her look even more interesting. I think she had said something to me just a moment ago. "Sorry, what did you say?" I asked. She giggled like she knew I had been staring at her. "Do you mind if I sit here? I just want to eat my lunch," she said. "Sure. Go ahead. I'm Harry." "I'm Diana," she replied with a smile. For the next hour, we talked about everything we could think of. We discussed movies, music, my chemistry homework, and my car. Diana was studying at college to help people who had been hurt. She liked dogs more than cats and enjoyed sci-fi movies and video games. She lived about half an hour outside of town, which was also on my way home. By the time we finished talking, I really liked her. We were still chatting when my mom came outside looking for me. "Harry?" she called. "Yes, Mom?" When she saw me, she walked over to where Diana and I were seated. She paused when she spotted Diana. "Diana, how are you, dear?" They exchanged greetings. It turned out that Diana had worked with my dad recently, which was why she was here. "Harry, could you do me a favor?" Mom asked. "Diana's ride left early because of a family issue. Since you're going by her place, could you drop her off?" "Sure, Mom, if Diana is okay with it." She smiled and touched my arm. "I'd love to, Harry." Mom looked relieved. I think she was happy she didn't need to ask someone else for help. 20 minutes later, I was ready to go, and Diana was looking forward to coming with me. I hugged Mom, and as I left, I waved to Dad for the first time. He smiled and waved back. That felt nice. Diana enjoyed the ride in my car, and we kept talking all the way to her home. Finally, she told me to turn into a small apartment complex that looked much like the one I lived in when I first moved out. "It's not fancy. I share a 3-bedroom flat with 2 other girls. We all help pay the bills." She paused. "I can't judge. Until recently, I lived in a small place too. Just 1 bedroom and no roommates." She glanced at me, and I could tell she wanted to say something while we sat in my car. "I had a great time today. Most of the time, families don't seem to care much, but today, I saw that you really care about yours. Even though there was some distance between us, I still showed up for Diana. That's one of the nicest things anyone has ever said to me. There was a quiet moment after that. We both knew she should go inside, but she looked unsure. Diana? Yes? I wanted to ask her out, but I didn't know how. I'd never liked a girl before, and I didn't think any girl had liked me. Next Friday, she said. Yes, Harry. You were going to ask me to see the new Marvel movie next Friday, right? She looked down at my car's dashboard, a bit shy. She was blushing and gave me the chance I wanted, which I felt building all evening. Yes, Friday. We exchanged numbers and emails, the usual things. I wanted to give her a goodnight kiss, but instead I went with a clumsy hug. As I drove home, I couldn't sleep, but I felt like I was floating during my lecture in the morning and while working in the afternoon. After a while, Norman pulled me aside. Harry, did you meet someone? I turned red and started talking. Yeah, Norman, she's beautiful. I met her at my parents' place. Her name is Diana. She goes to college and lives close by. We're planning to see a movie on Friday night. Norman thought it was cute. He kept calling it puppy love all week. He made sure I stayed focused at work because making mistakes in the lab could be very expensive. My job could even be unsafe if I made a mistake. Diana and I talked on the phone a few times that week. When Friday afternoon came, I felt really nervous, so I called Jack. He had spoken to Norman, so he knew what I was feeling. For the first 10 minutes, I told him all about Diana and our talks. I worried that I might mess up on my first date. He laughed and said, It's okay, Harry. Being a little nervous means you like her. But you're just going to a movie, so it won't be awkward. Most of the time, you'll be watching the screen. Just wear those nice dark blue jeans, that white shirt, and the white sneakers we bought you. Don't forget to brush your teeth and use deodorant. Just be yourself. You'll be fine. I said, But I'm not charming, Harry. He replied, You don't see it, but girls notice you all the time. Just yesterday, some of the lab tech girls were watching you as you walked around with your new style. You're a young guy driving a Mustang, and you have confidence in your work. Believe me, people notice you. It seems like Diana has seen you and wants to get close before someone else does. That thought made me even more nervous that night. Just as I said I would, I picked Diana up at 7. We drove straight to the movies for the 7:30 show. We both enjoyed the film. Marvel always tells great stories and has amazing special effects. This one made us laugh too. At one funny moment, the main character got surprised by his crush before he could turn invisible. Diana laughed so hard that she reached over and took my hand. When the scene ended, she kept holding my hand. I wasn't complaining, but I think I might need to watch the movie again because I kept getting distracted by holding her hand. After the movie, still holding hands, we walked to a cafe just outside the cinema. Diana pulled me over and we sat down to order Italian hot chocolates. If you haven't tried one, you really should. It's like a thick chocolate shake, but it's hot. It's so rich you could stand a spoon in it. We started talking about the movie we had just seen and what might happen in the next ones. Then we talked more about ourselves and what we wanted in the future, along with my car. I nervously told her how beautiful she looked in those dark jeans, a light blue blouse, and navy pumps. Her hair was shiny and tied back, and she wore thin glasses instead of the larger ones she usually wore. What really made my night was finding out that we both loved watching people. Have you ever sat and watched the people around you, noticing how they walk and what they do? We found out we both enjoyed this. We made up funny stories about the people we saw. One couple we imagined were Russian spies collecting secrets about our town. Another older couple seemed to be in a hurry to get back to their retirement home before they missed snack time. There was also a young couple who kept kissing every few steps. We joked that they were like Romeo and Juliet from different families but still in love. We laughed a lot, and I thought we had a great evening. After such a fun night, I didn't want to go home, but it was getting late, so we drove back to her place. I got out of the car and walked around to open her door. She stepped out and hugged me. Then she surprised me with a quick kiss on the lips. I felt a spark. Diana giggled and stepped back, asking, "Hey, Harry, next Friday?" I replied, "Yes, you're taking me out next Friday." Oh, right. Nothing could keep me from that. She laughed, knowing exactly what I meant. For the next few months, we spent almost every weekend together, and even met up a few evenings during the week. We talked a lot, held hands, and shared some sweet, simple kisses. I met her roommate, Cindy, who was a bit older, had blonde hair, and dressed nicely but kept it simple. Then there was Dawn, a quiet brunette who mostly kept to herself. I also had a chance to introduce Diana to Norman and show her around my office. When I introduced her to the lab team, I saw some of the girls looking at her a little longer than usual. Maybe Norman was right. Diana was making an impression. We traveled together often. Diana had an old Datsun, but we enjoyed using my Mustang even more. I bought us matching aviator sunglasses, with hers made to fit her vision. Diana felt a bit confused and guilty because they cost close to $300, but I really liked her and just wanted to treat her. I told her, "Diana, let me buy these for you. What many people don't know is that I have some money from my patents and my business with Norman. Getting you some sunglasses won't hurt my wallet." And I must say, we looked great in our matching shades as we got out of the Mustang. We had been enjoying each other's company for almost 2 months when something changed between us. It was a Sunday at my parents' house instead of our usual Saturday visit. We sat in our usual spot away from everyone, watching people as we enjoyed our food. Then Greg came over, waving a newspaper in front of us, thinking he found something funny. "Hey, look at this mistake," he joked, waving the paper. "It must be a mistake because you are a mistake." He laughed at his own joke, but it made Diana smile even more. She took the page, frowned for a moment while she read, then looked at me and winked. "This could get interesting, Greg. This article in the newspaper you think will embarrass your brother," she said while tapping the page, "is actually part of a bigger story about a young entrepreneur getting noticed worldwide. So why would the mistake be mentioned? Did he mess up so badly that they put his photo in to tease him?" He chuckled, but no one else laughed. Everyone could tell this wasn't going to end well for Greg. I sat quietly, but a big smile slowly crept onto my face. Diana stopped talking for a moment to let the news sink in. Harry was the main story in the newspaper, and the whole article was about him. I had been there when they came to his office to interview him. "It was a bit awkward when they called him the best young entrepreneur in the world," she said proudly. "And what's really exciting is that Harry, my boyfriend," she nearly shouted the last word, "is being celebrated not just for his scientific discoveries, but for starting a business worth over $10 million in less than a year." Everyone went silent. Most people looked stunned. Greg seemed confused by what had just happened. My mother looked both shocked and proud while my dad just stared. Our family friends looked at me with wide eyes, trying to rethink what they thought they knew about me. Diana had a big grin, clearly enjoying the moment. I was surprised and kept smiling. Greg's embarrassment quickly changed to surprise. I had just been called someone's boyfriend. It took a moment for everyone to understand what they heard. Then in the middle of all this, Diana looked at me and smiled, pushing her glasses back up her nose, looking like the smartest person in the room, at least to me, in that moment. Next, all eyes were on me. Everyone wanted to hear more about the article. Finally, someone grabbed the newspaper and read it out loud, and the questions started. I explained my invention on creating and recycling plastic, along with the business that Norman and I started. Our product was getting attention all over the world. Big companies were buying it quickly to see if it worked like we claimed. I knew that if it became successful, we would need to expand to several countries. The questions kept coming that afternoon. Everyone wanted to know how much money I was making, if I was going to be famous, and if they could be part of my business. My family had mixed feelings when I talked about the money and opportunities. They seemed excited, but when I said that investments would come later and that jobs were only for those with training, their faces fell. My dad especially changed from being shocked back to his usual frown when it came to me. I guess he thought he deserved my success just because he was my father. Ironically, Jones suddenly started paying attention to me. Maybe she thought I could give her something because we were related. Honestly, while I would help family, I didn't want to just hand out anything. They had treated me poorly when I was growing up. They weren't struggling financially thanks to my dad's construction business, so I thought they could keep their money and I would keep mine. That afternoon, something unforgettable happened. When the excitement quieted down, Diana came and sat beside me. She gave me the biggest kiss I had ever received. It wasn't just a quick kiss like we usually had. It was a real kiss that felt special. When she pulled back, she kept one arm around my neck and looked into my eyes gently. I was only 19 and Diana was about the same age. I had never kissed a girl before, and now I felt really lucky. "I'm your boyfriend, right?" I asked. "Yes, silly," she replied with a smile. "You are my boyfriend, and I'm your girlfriend." I smiled back into her big brown eyes and leaned in for another kiss. It was my second real kiss, and I think I loved kissing. Before this, we were just holding hands. But after that moment, whenever Diana and I were together, we always found a way to touch. Something else important happened that afternoon, right before we left. Everyone helped clean up. The guys took out the dishes and trash while I wiped the tables. Diana went to help with the dishwasher. When I walked in, I saw Mom, Dad, and Greg talking to her. She looked a little shy and caught my eye, but didn't say anything. When I walked over, Mom and Diana looked at me, and Dad and Greg moved away. I took Diana to a quieter part of the room. "What's wrong?" I asked. For a moment, she looked unsure, then looked into my eyes. "Nothing you need to worry about," she said, but I could tell she was still worried. "Did my parents say something that upset you?" I asked. She hesitated again and then nodded. After thinking for a moment and looking down at her hands, she spoke. "Yes, they didn't like that I talked about your success. They think you have failed. They want you to be successful, but only in their way. I think Roger wants to control your money." I frowned. "Well, Greg made himself look bad. He should think before he speaks. He always does this. He calls me the mistake because Mom and Dad didn't plan for me, but they had him and Joan all planned out. He never liked it when I was in the spotlight. You didn't just talk about our business with Norman. You also said you were my girlfriend." She turned red at that, and I took her hand and kissed it. "As for my dad thinking he should control my success and money, that's not going to happen. Besides, no one cared about me until you came along. Now I also have the job of looking after someone special to me, so I will work hard to be the boyfriend you deserve." "Oh, Harry." She fell into my lap and pushed me back on the couch. My mom watched from the kitchen but stayed quiet. Diana wrapped her arms around me and rested her head on my chest. She might have shed a few tears. I wasn't sure. The next few months felt like a wonderful dream. Diana and I spent time together whenever we could. She started coming to my house more often, and we shared some great kisses. I even got to touch her a little. She especially liked it when my hands moved from her waist up to her sides and back down. I noticed that sometimes she didn't wear a bra. I thought about taking a step further, but I decided not to. It was the toughest self-control I had ever exercised. When we kissed, it was strong. She pressed her leg against me more than once. I knew we were getting closer, but I didn't think we were ready for anything more serious yet. Perhaps in the future, but not right now. On the work side, things became hectic. The plastic products we were making were in high demand, and I started traveling a lot. Many companies wanted to meet with me, the young inventor. Some trips were just around the country, but others took me abroad. Usually Norman came with me, and we hired a PR firm to send different experts along. Big companies were excited to meet us, and I got invited to nice restaurants for good meals. I also stayed in comfortable hotels paid for by clients. I showed off our unique process in meetings and explained how our products would help in manufacturing. I gave impressive PowerPoint presentations. Every meeting went well, and Norman was happy because everyone wanted to keep placing orders. I always looked forward to coming home because I missed Diana when I was away. We tried to video call every few days. I could see she missed me just as much as I missed her. I took a lot of pictures of the cities I visited, and Diana enjoyed seeing the hotel rooms where I stayed. She had never traveled much, so having a boyfriend who traveled made her feel both excited and a little sad. I hoped that someday we could travel together. Because of my trips, we missed family gatherings for 3 months. Diana said she wouldn't go if I wasn't there. I felt something deeper growing between us. We were always invited. But if I wasn't there, Diana found a reason to skip. One of the most thrilling things was that during my travels, our team helped set up factories in 3 new countries. This would really help our business expand. When we came back from the trip that got us our 3rd site, Norman and I, along with our team, worked hard for 2 straight weeks. We worked every day without breaks, even on weekends. It was a busy time, but everyone knew it would pay off in the end. We decided that our main office would be the lab and research center, while the overseas offices would produce our products for local markets. This way, we could stay in control and address the local needs instead of making everything and shipping it all over the world. While we were busy, Diana often brought me lunch. She would sit with me in my office or in the company lunchroom. Sadly, we didn't get to see each other much during this time. Even after we set up the management structure in those first 2 weeks, I still worked long hours, sometimes up to 20 hours a day. By the end of the 3rd week, 5 weeks after I got home, Diana and I hadn't even gone on a date. Finally, she had enough and arranged for me to have Friday night and Saturday off. She didn't tell me herself. She asked Norman to let me know, and he laughed. When I began to voice my concerns, Harry replied, "That girl really cares about you. She has wanted to see you every single day since we returned. You should spend time with her. She understands that you are busy and that your work matters, but she also needs to feel valued by you. Why not take the evening and tomorrow off to be with her? You work harder than anyone else, so take a break and enjoy the next few days." Everything was ready, and our work would still be waiting for us when we got back. He raised an eyebrow and gave a little smile. "Don't forget to give her some of the gifts you got. Show her how much she means to you." That evening, I decided to do more than just work. I texted Diana to tell her I would be home soon and when to meet me at my apartment. When she arrived, she ran straight into my arms and hugged me tightly. "I missed you so much. Having lunch at your office is not the same as holding you close." She smiled and pulled back to look at me. "So, where are you taking me tonight?" "Sydney," I replied with a smile. "Where is that?" she asked, confused. "You know Sydney, the city in Australia," I said, trying to hide my excitement. I should have mentioned this before, but we lived in Melbourne, which is also in Australia. We had never traveled to Sydney together. I could see how thrilled she was. "A trip for just the 2 of us? I've missed you a lot. I enjoy our lunch dates, but I really want some time just for us." "Just you and me," I said, hoping I said the right thing. She hugged me tightly and showered me with kisses. "When are we leaving?" she asked, full of excitement. "Now." "But Harry, I can't. I don't have any clothes," she said, looking worried. I smiled and pointed to a suitcase I had packed behind the couch. "I got this for you while I was away. I stopped by your place and asked Cindy, your roommate, to pack some clothes for you." Her eyes widened in surprise, and I could see how much she appreciated it. "I bought it for you so you can travel with me sometimes. I missed you so much that my friend Norman had to stop me from coming home early during my last trip." Taking a breath, I confessed, "Diana, I need to tell you something. I love you." I looked down at my feet, feeling nervous. I didn't move, just staring at the floor. She was quiet, and I worried I had messed up and might end up going to Sydney alone. Slowly, I looked up at her. She had a big smile on her face and touched my cheek. I noticed a tear in her eye. "Harry, I love you too." When she kissed me, it was soft and gentle. We held each other close, and I could feel her warm tears on my cheek. It reminded me of our first kiss many months ago, and I knew in that moment that she loved me just as much as I loved her. "We need to go. I have plans for the next few days, just you and me." We took an Uber to the airport and flew to Sydney. It was a short flight. We sat in business class, and the flight attendant brought us some drinks. We sipped together, even though neither of us liked the drink. But it was fun to share it on the plane. It was Diana's first flight, and she was excited about everything. The takeoff, the landing, even using the bathroom. When we landed, a car was waiting for us, and the driver took care of our bags. He drove us into the city and dropped us off at Darling Harbour. There, we had dinner at a nice restaurant with beautiful views. Diana was always smiling, and above all, she was happy to be with me. We enjoyed some delicious food and drinks, and we had a fantastic time together. After dinner, we strolled hand in hand along the harbor on the boardwalk. Diana paused to watch a ferry come in, letting its passengers off. I could feel that something important was about to be said. "Yes, my love," she sighed. "I love hearing you say that, but I worry I don't deserve it." We found a bench with a view of the water and sat down. I noticed this would be a serious conversation. "Harry, I don't share much about my past. My childhood was tough. Both my parents are gone and I have no siblings. I was in state care until I turned 18 and it was not a good experience." I nodded, wanting to support her even as she changed the subject quickly. "When I do think about it," she continued, "there are a lot of hard memories. I had to do things I didn't want to do and I regret them." I saw tears beginning to form in her eyes. "Harry, you are my first love. You are the first person I've truly cared about. When I'm with you, I feel accepted. Maybe the hard parts of my past don't have to control my future. But Harry, I don't deserve your love." Her tears flowed more heavily. "You are so kind and honest. You give me so much. This trip is more than I ever dreamed. I was just happy to be with you and in our little town, but you take time for me even with your busy career ahead. Still, I feel broken and unworthy." I sensed she wanted to say more, so I tried to comfort her. "Diana, it's okay. I understand why you find it hard to talk about your past. I know there is pain there, which is why I never forced it. What you have gotten through makes you who you are, the woman I love. We've known each other for over a year now, and we've been dating almost that long. I promise there is nothing you can tell me that will make me love you less. If you ever need help, I'm here for you. I love you, Diana Brown, with all my heart." She began to cry harder. I tried to pull her close to show her that I didn't care about her past, but she pushed me away and stood up. Her eyes flashed with anger. "No, Harry, my wonderful Harry, I don't deserve your love. I'm not good enough." She cried even more. I started to understand what she meant. "It's okay," I said, but she shook her head. "No, it's not, Harry. I feel broken, unclean, and I can't give you what you need." She nearly fell to the ground, sobbing softly. "I have a past." Now I understood what was hurting her. She didn't want to share something from her past, and she knew I had never been with anyone before. I sat beside her, wrapping my arm around her while she cried. I listened as she sobbed, feeling like she had lost something dear to her. People walked past us, a man hugging a woman. Some asked if we were okay, but most just walked by, not wanting to help. After some time, I helped her back to the bench. "Diana, from the first day I met you, I liked you so much. You know, I've never really had friends. My family made sure my life was difficult. They treated me badly whenever they could. My sister ignored me, and my brother would hit me often, leaving bruises all over my body. As soon as one bruise healed, he would do it again. My dad looked down on me, and my mom never stood up for me. She looked at me worried. Whenever the family went out, they left me at home if they could. They didn't want to spend money on me. I mostly wore my brother's old clothes and had to do more chores at home than my brother and sister, but I received much less pocket money. If I didn't do things right, my dad would hit me with a belt, leaving me hurt for days." Diana looked scared and a little angry as I spoke. I had never shared this with anyone until now. I never trusted anyone enough to tell the truth. Whenever someone got close, I would defend my family and their actions. I don't know how to explain it, but I did feel like I was lost. "You think I would leave you because of what you just said? But I love you even more now. Even though you told me something hard, you tried to open up to me. I know you don't want to share everything, and that's okay for now. I trust you. You've been through things, and I accept that. I didn't know about your past before, but I understand that many people our age have different experiences, so I had no ideas about it. I love you, Diana. What you told me doesn't change how I feel. We're here this weekend because I care about you. I'm not going anywhere. I hope you'll want to stay by my side for a long time." When I said this, I didn't care about her past. It made her cry even more. She hugged me tightly and whispered, "It's not fair. I don't deserve you." She kept saying, "I love you," as if time stood still. It felt like we were in our own little world. Nothing else mattered. When we finally stood up, I couldn't pull her away even if I tried. She took out some tissues from her purse to dry her tears, and we headed to a bathroom so she could fix her makeup. I thought she looked beautiful, but she wanted to make herself feel less red and puffy. Once she felt better, we stepped back out. We continued walking along the harbor and found a small gelato shop. We enjoyed sharing a cup of cookies and cream. It was almost 11 at night, and I thought it was time to head inside. So I took out my phone and called our driver. I had booked a 3-bedroom suite for us at a nice hotel near the famous Sydney Opera House. The room had a view of the water and looked out at both the harbor bridge and the Opera House. When we entered the suite, we were both amazed by the view. We checked out all the rooms and then sat on the couch in the main room sharing a sweet kiss. Kissing her made my heart feel alive, and I loved every second of it. I knew we needed to talk about where we would sleep. But Diana spoke up first. "Harry," she said, "would it be okay if we shared a bed tonight? I had such a great night, filled with both joy and a bit of sadness. Tonight, all I want is for you to hold me while I sleep. I want to feel safe with the person I love." For a moment, I felt a rush of excitement. I really wanted to be close to her, and I wouldn't have wanted it any other way. We went to the big master bedroom. Our bags were already there because the driver thought we would be sharing the room. I smiled, feeling so happy to be next to the person I cared about the most. If I was lucky, we might even get a bit closer. Diana picked up a few things from her bag and went into the bathroom. She blew me a kiss as she closed the door. I quickly changed into some cotton shorts and climbed onto the bed. It was a nice bed. I had stayed in many hotels, some really nice, but many places that advertised king-sized beds actually had two smaller beds pushed together, which was awkward because of the space in the middle. But this bed was a real king-sized bed with soft sheets that felt freshly washed. There were many pillow choices, from big, soft ones that made you feel snug to firmer ones that didn't change shape. I tried a few, but when the door opened, I forgot all about the pillows. The woman I had always dreamed of stood there, glowing in the soft light from the lamps in the bathroom. She had a big smile on her face, and her legs were bare. I noticed she wore pretty black shorts. Her stomach was bare and looked fit. She had a small twist in her belly button that I thought was lovely. She wore a light nightgown that stopped just below her chest. I had seen Diana before. She was small, but she had a special beauty. The thin fabric showed a little, but not too much. She raised her arms in the doorway and moved her hips, showing off her shape. "Do you like what you see?" she asked. I was speechless, my eyes moving from her face to her waist and back up. She laughed and hopped onto the bed beside me. We wrapped our arms around each other and shared a warm kiss. This time, our hands explored a bit too. I touched her shoulders and traced the side of her waist. It felt amazing. She ran her fingers through my hair and gently touched my back. I gasped, feeling the excitement grow. "Did I do that?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "Yes," I said, feeling both thrilled and a little nervous. "Do you trust me?" she asked softly. "With my life," I replied with a smile. She took off her glasses and put them on the nightstand. Then she moved down the bed, making me lift my hips as she pulled down the sheets. I felt more open than I ever had before. They say there are two types of guys, those who show and those who grow. Diana smiled. "We might need to get new sheets." There was a small puddle in the middle of the bed. I smiled a little, remembering our fun times. "Let's think about that later in the morning. We have 2 other bedrooms here." We took off the wet sheets to let the bed dry and walked into the spare room across the hall. We hopped into bed and cuddled close to each other. "I love you," I said as I began to drift off to sleep. "I love you too," Diana replied, holding me tight. The next morning, I woke up to her warm body next to me. She had an arm over me and her hand was resting gently on me. She was still asleep and softly breathing. I moved carefully and she slowly woke up. I rolled over to look at her as she opened her eyes. "Good morning, my love. Good morning, Mr. Morning Breath," she giggled. Even though we had washed up the night before, we hadn't brushed our teeth, so kissing was kept to a minimum. But that didn't stop us from enjoying each other's company. Soon, we both felt hungry. We brushed our teeth, got dressed, and then went out for breakfast. Watching Diana get ready was like seeing something truly beautiful. I loved seeing her putting on her clothes. She wiggled her hips in front of me, and I had to sit on my hands to keep from reaching out because we were both really hungry. She found a shirt, slipped it on without a second layer, and smiled at me. "I'm going to tease you all day," she said with a playful grin. We headed to the front desk to ask for new sheets and then went out to find a cafe. We found a small, cozy cafe with great coffee and a nice menu. We sat down to enjoy our meal and watch people come and go. Sitting together, Diana kept her hand close to mine, which made me feel really happy. "Honey, I hope you know you made me really happy last night." I laughed. "Just like you made me happy." "No, Harry, I mean it. I told you I've been with a couple of people before last night," she said a little shyly. "But those times weren't good." She paused for a moment. "But last night was different. You made me feel special, like I was the only person in the world. I felt things I never thought I would feel." I smiled, and her cheeks turned a deeper pink. I was curious, so I asked, "Like what?" She took another sip of her coffee and looked down shyly before meeting my gaze again. "Well, I've never done some things before. If you had asked me yesterday if I would enjoy them, I would have said no. But doing them with you made me feel really special, and I would like to do it again." She found it hard to talk about, but I loved how shy she looked. She continued, "Harry, also, I have never felt like that before, not even by myself." Then she took a moment and added, "You were amazing, and I really enjoyed being with you. You felt new to me, and I was happy to share that with you." Leaning closer, she gave me a soft kiss. After that, we finished our late breakfast and walked around the city together. Then I called our driver, and in 20 minutes, we started our tour of Sydney. He took us to the Opera House where we walked around, took selfies, and had a great time. Then he drove us to the Harbor Bridge, and we arrived just in time for a bridge climb. We climbed to the top while cars passed below us. Diana and I had a truly wonderful day. After that, we went back to our hotel room and enjoyed being together, learning more about what we liked. We took a shower together, rinsing off from head to toe as we got ready to dress. I stopped Diana from reaching into her suitcase. Standing there, she looked at me. "I have a surprise for you," I said. I grabbed a robe and pulled out a suit bag. Inside was a little black dress, along with matching shoes and a purse that I had bought for her in Paris when Norman and I were there for work last month. It was a special brand, and I spent over an hour picking the right size with a salesperson who didn't speak much English. She looked surprised, but happy. After she put on some black underwear, I helped her into the dress. She sparkled and twirled around, enjoying her reflection before heading to the bathroom to do her hair and makeup. "Harry, this must have cost a lot." "You didn't have to do this," she said. "I have the money. I like to spoil the people I care about. People who will enjoy it, not just ask for it." "You mean your family?" I frowned as I pulled out my suit bag with a new suit that matched her dress. "Yes. I didn't think you would know about that. They have been asking me for money. Joan keeps sending texts, and my dad leaves voicemails because I don't like talking to him. He thinks they helped me, so he feels I owe them something." Diana tried not to frown while she focused on her makeup. "Your dad and sister have both tried to call me while you were away. I received voicemails asking me to convince you to help them with different things. They haven't threatened me yet, but I don't want to call them back. I'm not looking forward to the next visit out there. That's why I don't want to go without you. Your mom is nice, and your sister doesn't seem to care much. But your dad and brother... It's okay, honey. I understand. You heard some of the things I went through while growing up last night. I get it." She came closer and looked into my eyes, then gave me a gentle kiss. "You are one of the bravest men I know, Harry. I know I find it hard to talk about my past, and maybe someday I will, but in many ways, you have had it harder than me." We finished getting dressed, and a car was ready to take us to a fancy French restaurant. Later, I had tickets for a concert at the Opera House, but she didn't know that yet. At dinner, Diana ordered a fancy salmon dish with soft greens, and I chose a steak with a rich sauce and delicious vegetables. We were thinking about dessert when a waiter accidentally dropped a beautiful box that looked like it had old jewelry. I stood up quickly to check if the waiter was okay and helped him pick everything up. He seemed a little embarrassed, but was fine. Most people in the restaurant stopped to watch, especially when Diana got up to help him. After the waiter left, he looked back to see what was happening. I knelt down and opened the small box to find a shiny diamond ring inside. Everyone seemed to hold their breath, and Diana gasped. "Diana Brown," I started. "From the first day I met you, you took my heart. You make me want to be a better man. Your smile lights my way. When you hold my hand, I feel like I can do anything. This past year has shown me my heart belongs to you. I would be so honored if you would be my wife." For a moment, everyone was silent as she looked at me. Then she remembered to breathe. "Yes!" she shouted and jumped into my arms, hugging me tightly as I stood up. I took the ring from the box, and she held out her hand so I could place it on her finger. Everyone cheered, and the sound of applause filled the air. She smiled brightly at the ring, and then at me. The restaurant manager and the same waiter came over to congratulate us. The manager told us we didn't have to pay for our meal because he was happy to see the proposal accepted. After they left, another couple came over to wish us well. Over the next half hour, many more people stopped by to celebrate with us. I had never seen Diana so happy. Then the last couple to come over made her gasp. One of her roommates, Cindy, walked in holding hands with Jack. I had known they were dating for about a month, but Diana had no idea. Jack told me, and I was excited. They were just a few years younger than each other and made a great couple. Cindy hugged Diana tightly while Jack gave me a strong hug like a brother. We all went back to our table to share dessert together. I told Diana how I had planned everything and arranged for Jack and Cindy to come this afternoon for my special moment. Then I surprised them by saying I had 4 tickets for a concert at the Opera House tonight, with a fancy car waiting for us outside. It was a wonderful night. I had my fiancé by my side, looking beautiful, and my best friend next to me with his new girlfriend. The music from the concert was fantastic. We felt special because we were all dressed up. In the coming years, Diana and I would travel to other towns and go to concerts together. Around 1 in the morning, the car took us back to the hotel. We said goodbye to Jack and Cindy as they went to their room, and we headed to ours. "I wonder if Jack and Cindy will have a special night together like we will," Diana said as we got ready for bed. She took off her shoes but kept her glasses and engagement ring on. She climbed onto the bed and smiled. "Let's have some fun, Harry." I think the sun was coming up when we finished, and we realized we needed to sleep in one of the extra rooms because our room was a bit messy. We slept until almost noon when a message from Jack woke us up. "Hey, buddy, it's lunchtime. Are you two ready to join us before we head home?" I texted back that we would be down in half an hour. We shared a quick kiss, got up, took showers, got dressed, and packed our things. I called the front desk and they sent someone for our bags. We met Jack and Cindy in the hotel lobby. "Wow, Diana, are you okay?" Cindy asked, looking a bit worried as Diana leaned on my arm to sit down at the cafe. "I'm fine," Diana replied. "We didn't sleep until around 5 this morning, so I'm a little tired from Harry's attention." Cindy laughed, and Jack gave me a fist bump with a smile. After that, we ordered our food, and the girls went to the bathroom while Jack and I talked about the night before. He checked to make sure I was okay and kept saying, "Harry is the man," with a big grin. Then we talked about chemistry and my upcoming graduation. When the girls came back, Cindy looked at me with a mix of envy and respect. She whispered something to Jack, and his eyes got wide as he turned to me. "Wow, dude," was all he said. I didn't know what they talked about, but I felt like a superstar. We were really excited to get married a week after we got back. We picked a date a little over 6 months away. Diana practically moved in with me as soon as we got home. Most nights she stayed over, only going back once in a while to help her old roommates move. We also talked a lot about her studies, and she decided to change her classes to be closer to me. She became a regular at my office. Diana used the coffee table by my couch for her laptop and books. Even though she cut back on her classes, she still got great grades. It was nice to have her travel with me, too. Most of the time it was for work, but our clients and investors really liked seeing Diana with me. I loved showing her places I had visited. We ended up being close in almost every city we went to. When we got to family time, the reactions were mixed. We made sure to attend the next family gathering after my proposal in Sydney to tell everyone we were getting married. Diana proudly showed off her simple but pretty diamond engagement ring. My mom was thrilled and couldn't stop smiling. My dad even said, "Congratulations!" Joan was the most excited. She loudly cheered for our engagement and said she hoped Diana would make me a better man. "Oh, honey," Diana said jokingly to Joan, "he made me walk funny right after he proposed." I can tell you he's quite a big guy. Joan nearly spat her drink out, and my face turned red. Nobody likes to hear about their son's private life. My dad and brother also looked embarrassed, but I wasn't sure if they were angry or just shy for the rest of the day. Everyone was watching Diana. I felt happy just sitting back and enjoying the moment. My fiancé had brought me here. Another big moment for me was when I graduated from university with my chemistry degree. I thought about going back to school later, but with my growing business and Diana, I wasn't sure I would have the time. I figured I could always return to it another day. My company was doing really well. We had over 800 workers in 8 locations around the world. We made the main part of our product and sent it to other plants where they turned it into the special plastics we became famous for. My patent made it hard for other companies to copy our product without paying me, so I felt confident that Diana and I would be okay financially. But this was the only issue we faced before the wedding. I hired a legal team to protect my interests, especially because I was getting married. They wanted Diana to sign a prenup. Diana was fine with this, but my family didn't agree at our usual family gathering. We were sitting together talking about our upcoming wedding. I was on one couch with Diana while my mom and dad sat on another. My sister Joan was with her boyfriend Fred. I think that was his name. She always seemed to have a new boyfriend at every family event. Greg was sitting alone in his chair. I think not many girls could deal with him. He always acted like he was right, even when he wasn't. I think he got that way because Dad always gave him what he wanted without correcting him. Everyone except Diana and me was against the prenup. "It's not right, son. You're marrying Diana, and everything should be shared. A prenup is just a way for rich people to keep their money," Dad said. I replied, "But Dad, I am one of the rich people, and I don't want to keep anything from Diana." She gave my hand a squeeze. "But you need to understand that the prenup isn't just for me. It's to protect everyone who works for me, too. It makes sure that if something happens to me, everyone, including Diana, will be taken care of." Dad looked upset. "And according to the agreement, Diana will be well taken care of. I would never keep anything from her," I added. Diana squeezed my hand again. "Dad," she said, since we got engaged, she had started calling my parents Mom and Dad. I think it made Dad a bit uneasy, which was probably why she did it. "I fully support Harry. I will sign the prenup because I know he will always take care of me. I have nothing to lose, and it's the right thing to do." She looked directly at Dad, and for a moment it felt like they were having a silent argument. Then Greg, thinking he knew best, spoke up. "If it were me, I wouldn't do a prenup. I would just give her everything and walk away." Joan shot him a look. "Wow, you're so foolish." "I am not," he protested. "Yes, you are. Every time you call Harry a mistake, I wonder if he is or if you are." Mom jumped in before things got worse. "Enough, you two. This story is really about Harry and Diana, and they will decide what's best for them." Dad got up, threw his hands in the air, and walked away. No one understands. Life is tough. As the weeks passed before the wedding, we sent out invitations, and many people said they would come. We started to see the different groups we belonged to. I asked Jack to be my best man, and Diana chose Cindy to be her maid of honor. We invited a lot of people from our workplace, including several managers from our plants overseas. Some government officials and important business contacts also wanted to be there for this special day. A couple of reporters asked if they could attend too. Our PR team made sure they could come if they got permission for their photos and stories before sharing them. We also made a big decision. We bought land and started to build a house. It was a big 2-story house with 7 bedrooms, sitting on 100 acres, about 40 minutes from the city and an hour from my office. The house wouldn't be ready until a few months after our honeymoon, but I was sure it would be beautiful. The main bedroom was spacious, taking up most of the top floor, and had big walk-in closets. My favorite part was the double shower with 2 shower heads. We were also getting a large kitchen, a family room, a media room, a study, and a garage for several cars. We planned to stay there for a long time, even though I was doing well with money. We took out a small mortgage, but if things continued to go well, we could pay it off in a few years. I also decided to get a new car. I kept my classic Mustang because I loved it, but I bought a brand new 2020 GTR Mustang in burnt orange with black stripes. This car had over 500 horsepower and a 6-speed manual transmission, and you could hear it coming from far away. For Diana, we bought a new Jeep JL series with a removable hardtop and all the extras like heated seats and a navigation system, plus plenty of storage. With a new house, new cars, and our wedding coming up, we were excited to start our life together. Of course, we didn't always agree, but we talked things through and never went to bed angry. For our honeymoon, I got 6 weeks off work. We planned a wonderful cruise from Sydney to Honolulu, staying in a top suite on a great ship sailing in the southern hemisphere. The best part was that Diana was told to disconnect from all her devices while on the ship. After that, it would just be the 2 of us. The months flew by, and before I knew it, it was time for the wedding. The day was sunny and warm. As I stood at the altar waiting for my bride, I felt nervous. Butterflies in my stomach, just like every man feels before his wedding. Jack noticed how I was feeling. "Don't worry, my friend, there's always time to run," he chuckled. Greg, one of my groomsmen, and my brother joined in. "Yeah, if you make a mistake, just run now. Dad and I will take care of everything for you," Jack joked, giving him a little nudge. Just then, the music started, and Diana came out after getting ready. She walked down the aisle with Norman because she didn't have any family left. Norman was happy to guide her to me at the altar. He had a teenage daughter and felt a bit anxious about the day he would have to do the same. He saw this as good practice, and they made it down the aisle without any problems. As the ceremony went on, we said our vows. When the minister asked if anyone had any objections, we heard a grunt as Mom squeezed Dad's hand tightly, but that was all. And then we were officially married. The reception was wonderful. Diana knew exactly what I liked, and instead of a normal buffet, she hired some of the best BBQ cooks from across the state. They set up a fun competition in a field we rented just for the party. They brought big smokers to cook ribs, pulled pork, sausages, and wings. There were also sides like cornbread, coleslaw, and chili fries. Everyone seemed to enjoy the food. Even my dad had to admit it was good. As the night went on, we cut the cake, danced together, and chatted with our guests. I walked around the room talking to everyone. At one point, Norman and I even chatted with a reporter about how being married would help us grow. I don't remember what I said, but everyone was smiling, so it must have been fine. While I was talking to the reporter, I noticed my parents moving toward Diana during the last part of the interview. The reporter thought I was distracted because I kept looking at my new wife. That was the only moment I saw her look unhappy. My dad seemed to be saying something harsh, and my mom looked like she was trying to calm him down. I excused myself and walked over just in time to hear my dad finish talking. "Just don't forget what you owe us, or I'll make sure the boy knows it." I jumped in and asked, "What do you think my lovely wife owes you, Dad? And why would you need to make sure I know?" They all turned to look at us. Mom and Diana blushed, and Dad looked ready to explode. But before he could say anything, Mom quickly stepped in. "Your dad, who has had a bit too much to drink tonight, was just saying how we introduced you to God Save Mom." I wanted to ask Diana what was wrong, but she looked embarrassed. There was more to the conversation, but she silently begged me to let it go with her eyes. "That's okay, but if you don't mind, Mom and Dad, we need to take care of a few things and say our goodbyes to finish the party." Diana took my arm and we walked back to Norman. Jack, Cindy, and Norman's wife June were there too. We did the usual bouquet toss and Cindy caught it. I gave Jack a friendly pat on the back, and he smiled as he whispered to me that he had already bought a ring. After we said our goodbyes, we got into the limo that work had hired for us. We stood up through the sunroof and waved to everyone as we drove away. When we arrived at the hotel, I spent almost an hour helping Diana out of her dress. It was a little tricky, but it was worth it. She didn't have on a bra and she looked really nice, but then she quickly went to the bathroom. A moment later, I could hear her and I couldn't help but laugh. "This dress is so hard to move in." I had to ask Cindy and Joan to help me twice today just to get to the bathroom. At the reception, I had to cross my legs, she said. She mentioned that she had taken off her underwear but still had her stockings on. Now, where were we? That night, we shared a special moment to celebrate our wedding. We took our time, feeling tired from the long day. But soon we fell asleep, happy. The next day, we flew to Sydney and were driven to the cruise ship. Since we paid for VIP treatment, we could board whenever we wanted, and the staff treated us well. We decided to board early, and while others were getting settled, I ordered us 2 drinks, and we sat on our balcony. We had a butler just for us during this trip, and he brought our drinks so we could relax. I thought it was a good time to talk about what happened at the reception last night. "Diana, are you okay? I felt like something was wrong with Mom and Dad. When I jumped in, did I miss something?" Diana turned a bit red, took a sip of her drink, and sighed. "You're right, Harry. There was something going on, but it's not my place to say too much about them. What you walked into was your dad trying to put pressure on me. Now that we're married, he wants you to give part of your business to them. I don't want to keep secrets from you." She raised her hand and added, "I don't know everything. but I know enough to say that it could hurt you. However, it's not my place to share this. They need to tell you themselves. If I say something without them, it might make things worse." She looked sad. "I'm really sorry, my love. This isn't how I wanted our honeymoon to start. Please know that I love you very much. I'm fighting for you against your father and others who don't wish you well. I never want to see you sad. I'll always be here for you." It was just one day into our marriage, and we were already facing tough trust issues. As we sat and sipped our drinks, I felt deep down that Diana loved me completely. We sat silently for about 5 minutes while I tried to sort through my feelings. On one side, my wife didn't want to tell me something because she was worried it would hurt me, and she felt that sharing part of the truth wouldn't help either. On the other side, we were married, and we needed to trust each other fully. I decided to trust Diana, even if it was hard. "I have to say I'm upset. There's a secret involving me and my family, and it seems like you're part of it too," I said. She nodded, and I sighed. "But Diana, I'm going to trust you. I believe you want what's best for me and for us. I feel a little scared, but as long as you're with me and help me, I'll let you lead the way." She stood up from her chair, came over and sat on my lap. She kissed me. "My husband, my love, I'm sorry for what I have to say, but I want what's best for you. I know you want to know the truth, but telling you now might hurt you more. I just need a little time to figure this out for you." She kissed me again. "But now isn't the time for this talk. It's our honeymoon, and I think you owe me some fun." So I relaxed a bit over an hour later after our feelings settled and the dark thoughts faded away. Diana and I walked hand in hand around the ship. At first, our butler Phil walked with us, but then we told him we wanted to explore on our own. Those first few days were magical. We spent time in the sun, enjoyed the spa, watched shows, and played shuffleboard and table tennis. The ship stopped at islands, and we took guided tours of beautiful places. Diana had bought a bright navy blue bikini that fit her well. It was a little snug, showing off her figure, but still looked nice. I felt a bit jealous, but also proud seeing other guys, and even a few girls, turn to look as she walked by. The best part was the themed parties at night. Everyone dressed up for different themes, like All in White or Gatsby style. It was so much fun. We were invited to have dinner with the captain as special guests and got a behind-the-scenes tour of the ship. We were very close during our trip. Each day we shared special moments together. One day, after returning from the beach, Diana changed into comfortable clothes and we shared a lovely time together. She lay back on the bed and I soon joined her. We both felt very close and happy as we connected with each other. Diana was playful with me, and I wanted to make her feel good too. We enjoyed exploring our feelings together, and it felt like time stood still. Each touch and smile felt special. We both reacted to each other in ways that showed how much we cared. It was a moment we would always remember. After a while, we caught our breath and shared a laugh. I felt tired but very happy. I pulled Diana closer and kissed her gently, feeling grateful for our time together. "That was amazing," I said. "I didn't expect to feel that way." "I know," she replied, smiling. "I just wanted to make you feel good. But you know," she added with a teasing look, "I'd really like it if you did something nice for me later." I smiled, thinking about how wonderful she looked. "Sure, I can do that." We woke up, took showers, and got ready for dinner before heading out. When we got back later that night, I was still a bit tired. But my wife was full of energy, and we ended up having a great time together. Even though I didn't have as much energy after a long day, we enjoyed our honeymoon as a loving couple. We spent a lot of time together, and I had never felt closer to anyone than I did on that boat. When we arrived in Honolulu almost a month later, we were exhausted but relaxed. It felt like we were a new couple. I had booked us 2 nights in a beautiful hotel to end our trip. It was a penthouse with a lovely view of the water. On the first day, we slept and tried to get used to being back on solid ground. If you've been on a ship for a while, you might still feel like you're moving when you return to land. Resting helped us a lot. Holding my wife close felt comforting too. On the second day, we spent time by the pool and talked about our plans for when we got home. Diana was almost done with her college degree, and she couldn't wait to start looking for a job. She knew she didn't have to work because of my income, but she wanted to be active and help with expenses before we had kids. Speaking of kids, we both agreed we wanted to start a family sooner rather than later when we got back. Diana planned to stop taking her birth control pills, and we'd let things happen naturally. We felt ready to be parents and wanted to enjoy our lives together even when the kids grew up. We talked about our dream house, which was being built and would be ready in a few months. We loved the idea of hosting barbecues and birthday parties by the pool for our children. That thought made Diana really happy, and it was clear she was excited about having children soon. "My love, you promised me something nice the other day, and I'm still waiting," she said with a playful smile. I was instantly ready to surprise her. We got up from our lounge chairs and went to our room. Inside, Diana playfully took off her top, showing off her beautiful figure. She left the rest of her clothes on and knelt on the bed, leaning forward until she was lying flat on the sheets. As I said, my wife is truly lovely. She has a slim figure and everything about her looks great. With her back to me, she looked wonderful in her bikini bottoms. I took off my shirt and leaned down for a better look. I helped her gently onto the bed, and once she was lying down, I slowly moved away from her. We both laughed as we got all tangled up in the sheets. She reached over and held my face and said, "I love you so much, Harry. That was amazing." We both fell asleep for a bit, and when we woke up, we went to the shower to freshen up. Diana walked with a little bounce for the next few days, but she kept smiling until we boarded the plane to go home. The next few months were wonderful. Diana and I were really happy being married and spent lots of time together. We had fun with our friends Jack and Cindy and Norman and June. Our new house was coming together, even though the pool and garden still needed work. When I returned to work, we had more orders than ever, and all our projects were busy. I was away from home about a week every month, and 2 of those trips were overseas. But Diana always joined me because she didn't want to be apart. Having enough money made it easy for her to stay with me during the day while I worked. Diana would set up in my office. She worked on little projects for our house or contacted people online for support in our counseling course. She also talked with the staff. They liked her because it was nice to know the boss's wife. Sometimes she would explore famous places with one of our staff driving her around. We were having a fantastic time, almost like we were on a second honeymoon. When we got back home, we began thinking about our future. We still went to family gatherings every month, but we could only attend every few months because we were so busy. Another big choice we made was to stop using her birth control pills after 6 months of marriage. We bought some pregnancy tests and got ready to start a family. A few weeks later, we were at a family gathering. It was quiet, just us and family. It was the first time we had been there in a while. Diana noticed I was a bit uncomfortable. We had told my parents we were thinking about having a baby, and they were asking us many questions. Joan and Greg sat back and watched, and I was tired of my family judging everything I did. They thought it was too soon for us to have kids and said we should focus on our jobs. Even Joan and Greg said they believed we were making a mistake by wanting children so early in our marriage. After Greg made a nasty comment about how small I was and how long it would take me to have a child, I lost my cool. He called me a sad husband and said Diana was only with me for my money. I had put up with this for years. No matter what I did, they never thought it was good enough. It was time to leave. I stood up, feeling angry that no one ever stood up for me unless it was about money. "Let's go! Grab your things, we're leaving!" I said loudly. Everyone stared at me and I felt like I was the center of attention. "Where do you think you're going, boy?" My dad's voice boomed. He thought he was in charge. "I'm going home!" I shouted back. "Why would you want to do that? We're family!" he replied. I knew he didn't really want me here, even if he acted like I should come and go when he wanted. For once, I let my feelings out. "I don't feel like you're my family," I said, noticing the shocked looks on their faces. Family is supposed to care for each other. Sure, we can joke and argue, but we should be there for each other. This family hasn't done that. Every time I need help, none of you step up. I pointed at my dad. "You always find reasons to say I can't do things. You put me down and tell me that life isn't fair. You make me feel like I should give up and do what you want, which is never what's best for me. You've never really helped me. I've never enjoyed being your child. You show so much love and support to my sister even when she messes up." I shouted, feeling frustrated. "You give your little princess everything she asks for. She just has to look sad and you give in. I used to think I had a great sister, but now I see her as selfish. She doesn't understand life because you always do everything for her. And you, Greg, have hurt me since we were kids. I could have gone to the police for the things you did to me. You were both a bully and a source of pain. What's worse is that I protected you and kept quiet about what you did to me. And now you question my worth? You can't even keep a girlfriend for long. Do you know why they leave? It's because you think you're perfect when you're not. You act like your parents never did anything wrong. Well, let me explain something to you, big brother. You are not strong. You may have big muscles, but you don't know how to use them. Every time you speak, you just embarrass yourself. People feel awkward when you talk. All you can do is throw insults at me because you feel bad about yourself. Just because you're insecure doesn't make your comments okay. You need to grow up. I looked at all of them. My family doesn't care about me. My sister and my mom don't care what happens to me. Joan only talks to me when she wants something. No one said anything. They just stared as I continued to express my anger about money. Yes, I have some. Do you know why I don't give it to you? Because you don't care about me. I worked hard to pay for my college because you wouldn't help. I built a business with Norman and you called me foolish. But now that I'm doing well, you think you deserve my money? Do you really think I should just give it to you? You care more about the money than about me. To you, it's the only reason to keep me around. You hope I'll give you some. I can see that your construction business is barely getting by because you spend more than you have. You keep asking for my help and pushing Diana to make me give it to you, but you haven't shown me that you deserve a single penny. I don't think you understand what it means to truly care for someone and to receive a gift. Honestly, I don't trust any of you. The only person here who cares about me is my wife. I've been going to these family get-togethers for the last few years because she asked me to. She always says family is important and understands how lonely it can feel. But now, I'm ready to understand what that really means. I'm done with this. Just leave me alone. Let's go. I turned and walked away, grabbing my keys and wallet from the kitchen. Diana followed me quietly as I headed towards the door. My dad tried to speak up. "Now listen to me, son." I stopped and gave him a strong look. My mother, standing next to him, looked surprised by my anger. "No, Dad, you listen. My name is Harry. It's not son. It's not a mistake or a cruel nickname. My name is Harry. That's spelled Harry. But you know what? Call me whatever you want from now on, because I'm done with all of you. Goodbye." Without saying anything else, I left them in shock and got into my car. Diana climbed in quietly beside me. I sped out of the driveway, leaving tire marks and smoke behind. I glanced back and saw them standing outside, watching me go. Soon the calls started. First it was my dad's phone, which I didn't answer. Then my mom called, and even Greg and Joan tried to reach me. When that didn't work, they began texting. They even called Diana, but she wisely ignored them. We had been driving for almost an hour when Diana broke the silence. "Harry, are you okay?" "No, I'm not. I'm really not okay. I've kept all this inside for so long and it just gets worse. I'm sorry, but after what Greg said today, I couldn't handle it anymore. I don't want anything to do with them." A tear rolled down my face. I didn't like my family anymore. Maybe I didn't even love them. But when I looked at Diana, I felt love. My feelings for my family had faded away a long time ago. I had put up with them for too long, but now it was clear to me. I couldn't understand why they treated me this way. As I drove home, I cried for the part of my life I never fully understood. I felt like I had lost something. Diana placed her arm on my leg. "It's all right, my love. I understand. I'm proud of you. Let's give it some time and I'll be here for you. I don't want to talk to them without you, but I'll stand up for you and make sure they know we're done." "Are you okay?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, Harry. Like you, I'm not okay. I've told you some things before and we need to talk about it soon. If we really want to move away from your family, there are some things I need to share too. I'm scared to tell you because I don't know everything and it's not good. But I want you to know that I love you so much. My heart, my life, and everything are yours. I will fight for you. I'll stand by you." She was trembling as she said that. I felt anger, but I also saw that she was scared, so I tried to stay calm. "We can talk now if you want to. If you need to, we can find a place to stop." "No, Harry, I need some time to sort things out. There are things I need to handle. Can you trust me for a couple of weeks?" "I'm not sure. I can sense your fear and sadness." She started to cry. "I know, sweetheart. But if we want to move forward, we need to do it properly. I need to sort some things out before we can talk." Okay, I don't like it, but yes, I will trust you. I feel like this could change our lives more than I'm ready for. Please don't take too long. Today showed me that I feel lost and scared because I don't know what's going on. On the drive home, we kept reassuring each other that everything would be okay. But inside, I felt a storm brewing. I sensed that Diana had something important to tell me, and she needed time to get ready for it. This was not going to be easy. We had some leftovers for dinner and then prepared for bed. I spent the afternoon working on some presentations for the upcoming weeks, while Diana and I planned to have breakfast with Jack and Cindy in the morning. As we settled into bed, we kissed. Diana playfully touched me and giggled. "Did you really say that to Greg about comparing sizes?" I laughed for the first time in hours. Yes, as brothers, we saw each other in our underwear a few times when we were kids. I might have exaggerated a bit, but from what I remember, Greg is much smaller than me. I got a bit mad and may have said too much. "Sweetheart, you might not think you're strong, but from what you said, I believe you have the two strengths that matter most to you." She giggled again. "Yes, to the one down here," she said, playfully touching my arm. "And the one up here?" she added, leaning in and kissing my forehead. "You are the smartest person I know. You're rich but still down to earth, and you have almost 1,000 employees around the globe. Even Norman relies on you. I've never seen you lose your cool, even today. You used reason and spoke only the truth. Like I said in the car, I'm really proud of you. I love you." My wife looked at me with bright eyes. "So, mister, do you think you might want to start a family with me, like you mentioned at your parents' today?" All I could think about was being close to her. Over the next hour, we shared our love in a sweet way. The next few weeks felt a bit intense. Work was busy as we worked on a new version of my well-known plastic formula. It wouldn't need a new patent, but it would help us produce more without needing a lot of extra materials, which meant more profit for us. Diana and I were focused on trying to start a family. She read up on the best ways to do this, including the right times and methods. Since she was about to be at her most fertile, we planned to be together every 2 days. I loved being close to my amazing wife each morning and night. Meanwhile, my family was trying to sort things out after I left. My sudden departure had caused a big argument among them. I didn't understand why they were fighting. I had told some harsh truths about how my family treated me, but I wasn't there when it happened. When my mom couldn't get in touch with me or Diana, she tried calling Norman and Jack. They didn't know about our family issues. When I opened up a little, they felt bad for me. Jack especially wanted to help make things better. "Harry, you will need to talk to them again. Why not do it sooner?" he said. He told me I had said what I needed to say. I was surprised when he mentioned he noticed the marks on me when we were kids. He said some teachers and students had seen them too. They thought it was either my dad or Greg. This is why they worked hard for my scholarship. "We wanted to help you get away from that house before things got worse. You've come so far. You have a wonderful wife, a good job, and you will be a great dad. But you need your family too. If you can talk to them, just make sure it's on your terms." I didn't want to agree, but he was right. I knew any conversation had to be my choice. I just didn't know how soon that choice would be ignored. The next evening, Deanna and I had just finished being close and were lying on the bed when she surprised me with what she said. "Harry, I think I need to see your parents tomorrow." "What?" I nearly shouted. I was still trying to understand what Jack had told me, and it was hard. She sighed and said, "Cindy called me today. She mentioned your talk with Jack. He really worries about you. I also need something from your parents before we can figure things out. If I visit your mom without your dad or Greg, it might stay calm." I felt uneasy about this. Something felt off. "I'm sorry, but I can't go along with that. My wife had rescued me from these people, and she always said she loved me. She was the one I loved completely. But right now, my heart was aching because of my family. Trust me," she said. And against my better judgment, I did. I stepped out of my parents' bedroom and stumbled in the hallway. My mother touched my shoulder, but I wasn't thinking clearly. I pushed her away hard. She stumbled back, shocked, but I couldn't focus on her. I was in so much pain it felt like my heart would break. Then I heard my sister laugh. "Guess we can call him a loser now," she said. I started to cry. I stood up, confused about what to do. My arms felt heavy. I could feel my heart pounding in my neck. In the bedroom, I heard my dad making noise. It shook me to my core. I backed away down the hallway, grabbing the table by the front door. "No!" I cried. I could still hear their laughter. My mother was starting to recover from the push. She looked at me and said, "Harry, it will get better." But I ran out the door. I couldn't bear the betrayal from Deanna and my family anymore. I hurried to my car, feeling lost and unsure how I even started it. I drove away quickly, crying and not thinking about what would happen to me next. To me, my life felt over. All my reasons for living were gone. I felt betrayed by the one person who promised to be with me. When the police sirens began to chase me, I was speeding far too fast. I didn't care. I turned sharply. My tears dried up, replaced by anger. I switched my car into sports mode to make it harder for the police to follow. They probably knew who I was, but it didn't matter. They had not experienced the same betrayal I had. If I went down, I wanted it to be memorable. But then a scary thought hit me. What about my unfaithful wife and my family? If I died, they would get everything. I was still managing to escape the police for now, but help would come soon. I think I called Jack quickly. "Hey, Harry, how are you? Did you find Diana?" he asked. I tried to stop the tears. "No time to talk. I'm in trouble and need you at the police station right now. Call Norman too and make sure my lawyer is ready." "I'm sorry, but I can't help with that," he said. I saw my sister sitting with Diana. Joan stood up, sighed, and smiled at me. I heard my mother's voice come from my wife's mouth say, "Don't worry, boy, this will fix everything." I almost yelled, but held it in. I was in some kind of lounge across the room where Norman and June were sitting at a table. Tim was there too, but Jack and Cindy, who I thought had been there before, were gone. When I moved, they all noticed me right away. June quickly came over to me, her calm voice soothing me. "It's okay, Harry. You're all right. You're still at the police station. It's morning and everything will be fine." She gently rubbed my back, and when I sat up, she sat down next to me. She kept saying that everything would be all right. I often wondered what a mother's love felt like. Now June seemed to care for me more than my own mother ever did. "Where are Jack and Cindy? I thought they were here before." Tim, Norman, and June exchanged worried looks. "I don't know if you're ready for this, Harry," Norman said. I swallowed hard. My heart started beating faster, and I felt tight in my chest. "Diana?" They nodded. I knew I had to hear it, so I prepared myself for the truth. "They are at the hospital with Diana." "The hospital? Wait. Hospital?" I felt like my whole world had fallen apart. It seemed like everyone was against me. But I still cared about her. Was she hurt? Had something happened to her? Norman spoke again. "Harry, we've been talking for the last few hours and think we understand what happened last night. If I were you, I would feel betrayed too. You think almost everyone has let you down. We believe what you saw upset you so much that you couldn't think or speak. We got 3 words out of you, and that led us to some ideas. That's why Tim went to your parents' home to find out more." Tim took control of the situation. There were problems, and it wasn't over yet. 2 police officers knocked on your parents' door around 2 in the morning. They saw lights on, so they knew someone was home. After knocking for about 15 minutes, your mom finally answered. The officers didn't have a strong reason to enter without permission, but they had enough from your report to ask questions inside. After another 20 minutes talking to your mom, your dad stepped out to send them away. He insisted everything was fine, that it was just family at home, and there hadn't been any issues apart from your earlier argument with your wife. He told the police he had kicked you out because you were rude to family. He said your wife stayed to help them because of your anger. He paused and looked at me. "How are you doing?" he asked. I clenched my teeth. That wasn't the truth, but I could tell this wasn't the whole story. I would keep it together for now. Tim nodded. Norman and June were listening too. They hadn't heard everything since I was still asleep. They only knew that Diana was in the hospital being taken care of. The police had no more information, so they were getting ready to leave. But just as your mom closed the door, your brother came out of the master bedroom, shouting and not dressed. "Dad, hurry! She's waking up! We need to put her to sleep again." "What?" "Norman!" June and I shouted at Tim at the same time. We jumped to our feet. "Harry, Diana was drugged!" I felt like my world was closing in. I could hardly breathe. This time my pain was for Diana. I was there and I hadn't noticed. She was tied down and couldn't move, but I hadn't seen it before. Oh no, what have I done? I left her there. I felt faint. I was in the room and I thought I was going to fall, but June caught me. "Harry," she whispered, "don't fall. Diana needs you right now." She was right. I had let her down worse than I thought. I needed to know more. I was determined to hear the rest. I think they could tell. "Tim, please keep going. I need to know." He nodded. "It's okay, Harry. This is hard for everyone." He took a deep breath. "It seems that Greg and your parents were shocked at first. Your dad tried to shut the door, but the leading officer pushed it open and went into your parents' bedroom where Greg had just come from. Your brother ran away to the back of the house. The officer would have chased him, but he found Diana instead. His partner was calling for backup and getting ready because things were becoming serious. They found Diana tied to the bed, crying and calling for you. Your sister was next to her, lying back and watching, knowing Diana couldn't fight back. Soon, 4 more officers arrived, and within minutes they were all in the house. More backup was coming. They arrested your sister right there on the floor by the bed and your mother at the front door. But Greg and your dad managed to escape. They ran to the back of the house and attacked an officer who was looking for them. Then they did the same to another officer. Now both of them are in the hospital. Your father and brother are on the run. Diana is okay now. They untied her and covered her with a blanket until the ambulance arrived. "Harry, she knows you were there last night. She's feeling very tired but keeps asking about you. Even in her sleep, she says she needs to keep you safe. I have to go to her. I told her I need you to wait a few minutes, Harry. With everything that's happening, you are not under arrest. But I need to hear your side of the story. There are some things we need to clear up. Diana is safe in the hospital now. When can we take him to see his wife?" June asked. "Soon. Harry, can I get your statement? The sooner we do this, the better." For the next hour, I told Tim, Norman, and June who could stay. I explained what happened and how Diana went to talk to my parents after I got upset with them. I said she needed to discuss some important family matters with me. I shared how I panicked and went to my parents' house after I got the text saying she wasn't there. When I arrived, I found my family in bad shape and my mother was wearing her robe. I walked in to see my father with Diana, who was tied up on the bed. At first, I thought Diana was okay. I felt so much pain that I ran away, wishing it would all end. I told them how I came back to my senses when the police chased me. I drove straight here to turn myself in and called Jacques to get Norman and a lawyer. I told them how I fainted and couldn't remember much until Tim arrived. I woke up here a little while ago. Tim took notes and asked about certain names and comments. He seemed to be deep in thought. Finally, I told him my father never called me by my name. Greg always called me the mistake. So maybe they thought that comment was meant to hurt me more. Harry, this is serious. When we were in school, you often wore clothes that were too big. There were rumors that you walked funny and had bruises when doctors examined Diana. They found bruises on her back that looked like she had been harmed. Does this connect to what you went through? I felt my anger rising. My family hurt my wife, just like they had hurt me. The woman I would do anything for was hurt because of me. I needed to be strong. I explained that Greg used to hit me when he wanted to, and that was how my family treated me. I shared how my hard work was often ignored. After about 10 more minutes, Tim seemed satisfied and asked us to wait while he wrote his report. It took about 20 minutes for Tim to return. "Okay, everyone, I have some news. First, the charges of speeding and trying to escape the police are dropped. Instead, you will take a defensive driving course to make things easier for you. I talked with the station boss, and he agreed to help you with some police charity events coming up. This was the biggest legal problem you had, so now you can relax." Just as I was processing this, he added, "I'm getting a car to take you to the hospital. You shouldn't drive right now." He glanced at Norman and June. "We can take both of you if you'd like." Then he paused. "Your mother and sister are here." He waited for a moment. "Your mother wants to see you." That was simple for me. "I don't care. I need to see Diana." Tim nodded, and we figured out the rest. Tim drove me straight to the hospital in his police car, while Norman and June took my car home. They were going to get some clothes for Diana and me before coming to the hospital. When we arrived, they took me right to the special room where Diana was. After moving her from emergency care and checking her status and insurance, I saw she was getting great care. She was hooked up to several machines and looked uneasy. I went right to her bed, kissed her forehead, and held her hand. I wasn't sure if she could feel me there, but she seemed to calm down. Just then, Jack and Cindy walked in while holding Diana's hand. We embraced and cried together. The next few days were very emotional. Many people came to visit us. Norman, June, Jack, Cindy, Tim, and some co-workers who knew both Diana and me showed up. News had spread about our trouble, and many folks in the city were supporting us. We received cards and flowers from many different people, most of whom I didn't know. That first night, I slept in a chair next to Diana. Around 2 a.m., I felt her hand on my head. I looked up and saw her awake, just staring at me. I hadn't let go of her hand since I got there. "I'm so sorry," I said first. "Please tell me you love me," she asked, her eyes full of hope. "I love you so much," I replied. She gently pulled me closer, and I kissed her softly. Then I carefully climbed onto the bed without bumping any of the machines connected to her. I wrapped my arms around my wife, my beautiful wife, who had gone through so much. Listening to her story made me really angry. I wanted to make things right. My family had been hurt, and even my mother, who often ignored me, would feel the weight of my anger. How could someone do something so awful over and over? I wondered why I had to go through this. After Tim and Karen took Diana's statement, they said goodbye and would return to check on us later. Just then, everyone else was about to come back into the room when I had an idea. I asked for a little more time alone with Diana. They looked confused, but understood that this was important, so they closed the door. They knew some things about what happened, but I wasn't sure they knew it all. As they walked away, I saw that Diana looked worried, and I felt a little worried too. My wife had been hurt before we met, and now my family had added to her pain. I didn't know what problems we would face together, but I believed she didn't mean to hurt me. It would be hard, but I had to support her. She was still trying to understand everything. I thought we would need a good therapist for both of us, but I was sure that Diana was hurting much more than I was. I leaned back on the bed and wrapped my arms around her. We sat quietly for a few minutes while she cried. She held my arm tightly. I knew this would happen many times in the days to come. I felt sad. Our relationship was strong, but it felt broken. I couldn't believe my family could be so cruel to me, their own family member. This thought made me angry again, but what Diana had said earlier came back to me. As she started to calm down, I knew I had to ask her some hard questions. "Diana, I'm not going to ask if you're okay. I know you're not. I'm not either. But I want you to know that I still love you so much, no matter what. We will get through this together, okay?" She looked at me. She had taken off her glasses, and her lovely brown eyes were red. Her face was puffy, and she had tears streaming down her face. She looked very upset. But when she looked at me, I think she felt that I would stay with her. She was searching for hope and needed something to hold on to. I wanted to be that for her, but I needed to know more. Earlier, while you were telling us your story, you mentioned something I didn't know before. Can I ask you about it? If you don't want to talk, just say so and I'll let it go, okay? She nodded. "You said he's not my son. Diana, what does that mean?" For a moment, she looked worried. Then she stared at her hands and back at me. It was hard for her to speak, but finally she said, "My love, this is something I really wanted to tell you. It's why I was looking for your mother's papers. One of those papers is an old DNA test about you. Roger is not your real father." Suddenly, things started to make sense. So all these years, they knew and never told me? Why? From what I understand, they didn't find out until you were about 3 years old. Then, as you grew up, people started to notice things. Your mother had an affair. You didn't look like your father or your brother. Your hair was a different color. I don't know every detail, but that's where their anger comes from. They think you don't belong to the family. To them, you are an outsider. I believe Roger only gave you what he had to and nothing more. You might think the affair is why your mother never stood up for you. You were her secret, the mistake that Roger wished never happened. Greg and Joan are his kids, but you're not. You knew? I asked. She looked down and nodded. Yes. A few months after we started dating, I learned something important by chance. Back then, I was just a friend to your family. They didn't know we were together, and I didn't want to tell them because you had become so important to me. One day, I unexpectedly walked in on Roger. I'm sorry, but I can't think of him as your dad anymore. He was shouting at your mom about something you had done, maybe something with your chemistry project. He said that since you weren't his son, he didn't have to deal with you, and that you owed him for raising you. I heard him say that. After he left, Martha shared some information with me. She stopped for a moment to breathe and then continued. There's more to the story. Martha showed me proof related to your DNA and hinted that she had a letter from your real father. She mentioned that Roger would never let you see it. That's why I wanted to get those papers for you. A few days ago, I went to their house, hoping to convince Martha to give me the documents while Roger wasn't around. They should belong to you. I wanted to tell you so much, but it wasn't my place to share your story. I knew Roger would never tell you the truth, but I hoped your mother would finally speak up for you. I sighed, feeling more confused than ever. Time seemed to stretch on, and I knew I needed to move forward, so I thought about what to ask next. This next question might hurt my already troubled wife. Why couldn't you tell me? Diana looked down at her hands and stayed quiet for a long moment. Di, why didn't you tell me? I need to know. I feel really hurt and need the whole story so we can work through this. She nodded slightly, almost too small to see. This is hard, Harry. Do you remember before our first time together when I freaked out and called myself broken? I didn't feel like I was the good woman I should be. I thought I wasn't the person you deserved. I placed my hand on her arm. I didn't care about that. I just wanted you to be with me, and you trusted me completely. Tears fell from her eyes onto the hospital bed, but she kept talking. What I could never share was about my uncle, who was alive before we met. I didn't find out until I was almost finished with high school. He was my relative. The Child Protection Agency thought living with him would give me some stability. But Uncle Clinton wasn't a good person. He took the money but didn't want to take care of a child. He drank a lot and used drugs. One night he came into my room. She paused, crying hard and holding my hand tightly. He came into my room and hurt me. He took my innocence away and left me shattered. I held her close, feeling shocked to learn that the loving woman I knew had such a painful past. About 3 months later, he died from a drug overdose. I hadn't lived with him long, but that was one of the worst times in my life. I was 18 when he died, and he left me with nothing. I was on my own with just a little money and a few clothes. I got a part-time job in an office and started college. It didn't pay a lot, but it helped me cover some bills while I waited for my student aid to come through. I moved into an affordable apartment with 2 girls. That's where I met Cindy. The job I found was at a construction firm. You can probably guess which one. Yep, it was MJG Constructions, my dad's old company. I had been working there for about 6 months. Roger, my boss, liked to invite people from the office to his parties. I think he thought it made him seem friendly and like a good leader. I nodded along. We were always told to act properly when Roger's friends were around. After 6 months of this, one day, Roger spent a lot of time talking to everyone else but me. I was busy handling many office tasks, like scheduling workers and organizing trucks. One day, after checking in with everyone, Roger sat next to me at my desk. He said he wanted me to come to the next meeting. He mentioned he had a son he wanted me to meet. He said that I didn't really fit in with his family, but since I looked a bit different, maybe we would get along. I was surprised by the comment, but he went on. He said he knew about my problems with my uncle. Roger promised he could keep that private at work if I would meet his son. I shook my head slowly, putting the pieces together. It felt like my father, or whatever Roger was to me, was setting us up. Yes, she answered, smiling. That made me happy, like the sun coming out after a rainy day. Later, when I told people you were my boyfriend, I learned that Roger introduced us to get to your money. He thought he couldn't just ask you for cash because you might say no. That idea had also hurt his relationship with your mom, so he thought he could use me to get money from you. But once my college money came through, I left that job. That happened right after we met, so Roger couldn't use me for that in the end. So how did you find out? I asked. She took a deep breath and said Roger told her after I announced we were dating. He warned her that if she didn't do what he wanted, he would tell you bad things about my uncle. He wanted to make sure you wouldn't want anything to do with me anymore. He called me names and said I was damaged. How did you react? I asked. It was tough. I was falling for you and didn't want to lose you. What he called me hurt a lot. Still, I knew you would make your own choices. I told him that if you needed to talk, I would be the one to help. But I would never ask you for money. That was yours. He could threaten me, but I wouldn't betray you like that." Suddenly, it felt like a heavy weight I didn't know I was carrying was lifted. "Diana, before you say anything else, I really need to tell you something," I said. She looked at me, and I could see she was nervous. She had just shared something that could change everything for us. I felt her grip tighten on my arm, so I patted her arm gently. "You are the most amazing woman I've ever met. I loved you so much even before I knew all this. You are the center of my world, and I didn't think I could love you more. When I saw you in my parents' room, it felt like everything inside me had vanished. It seemed like my heart and soul were taken away, leaving me empty. By the time I got to the police station, I was in shock. My world felt like it had fallen apart. I loved you so much that nothing else mattered to me." Tears filled her eyes again. She looked down and asked, "You say you loved me? Has what they did to me changed that?" I answered firmly, "No." She looked up at me. "If anything, I love you even more now, Diana. You have been hurt, but you never let me down. You went to that house to find something for me. You didn't tell me everything, and I can't blame you for that. Even with all this, you are still fighting for us. Diana, I could not love you more than I do right now. Trust me, those who hurt you will pay for what they did. I promise." I took a deep breath to calm myself. "This will be hard and we will struggle, but I will be with you every step of the way." Then I leaned in, held her face gently, and kissed her. It was a sweet kiss, full of love, and it lasted longer than I thought it would. Just then, there was a knock on the door. Jack peeked in. "Hi, is everything okay?" "No, it's not okay, Jack. We're not fine, but we have each other and we will get through this," I replied. "Please bring everyone in. If Diana is okay with it, there are important things you all should know." Everyone came into the room, and with Diana's nod, I told them what had happened over the past week. I revealed secrets about our family that I had just learned, including the ways my family had hurt Diana. Jack and Norman looked really upset. When I told them that I wasn't Roger's son and that my mother had an affair, they were shocked. They couldn't believe the plan to use Diana to get money from me. They felt sorry for me. I chuckled and said, "Well, it backfired. Instead of money, I found the best partner. We are going to stick together, and now all that money will be used to make them pay." We spent the rest of the afternoon talking. After a while, Diana started to look distant as some painful memories came back to her. Tim knocked and came in, and the others understood it was time to leave. They told us they would check on us first thing tomorrow. Tim updated us on what was happening. They had a few leads on Roger and Greg, but they were still on the run. My mother and sister were still in custody and had seen their lawyer. Tim wasn't sure how much longer he would be our lawyer after hearing the charges against them. Although our family money wasn't frozen yet, it might happen soon. We talked for a few more minutes. Then he left, saying he would keep us posted. I sent a message to my lawyer to discuss bailing out MJG. Even with everything happening, many people relied on that company for their jobs. If the business could stay open, I might be able to buy it and keep everyone working, but I wasn't sure if the lawyers would need to look into it that night. We slept in the big hospital bed together, holding each other close. Diana would have to stay for another 2 days before they would let her go. They were doing important work for her health, and she needed to talk to someone from the hospital first. Luckily, Norman and June brought us clothes and other things from home, so we felt more comfortable. In the morning, we took a shower together in the small hospital bathroom. Even though we usually like to have fun, we kept it simple this time. We just washed each other and held on tightly, feeling safe in each other's arms. Later that day, Diana's doctor, a woman named Marge Hill, came in. Dr. Hill reviewed most of the blood test results and said Diana was healthy enough to go home the next day, but she had something else to discuss. "There's something more we need to talk about," she said. "Normally, we do this alone with the patient. Would it be okay if your husband steps out?" Diana held my arm and said, "No, it's fine. Dr. Hill, you can say anything in front of my husband." Marge nodded. "Okay, I just wanted to check. During your blood test, we saw some hormonal changes that are not what we usually expect." She paused, waiting for us to take in her words. "After what you've been through, some changes are normal due to stress, but these signs are more connected to pregnancy." Diana looked shocked as she asked, "Are you saying that I am pregnant?" Dr. Hill confirmed, "Yes, you are pregnant. After everything you have dealt with, we usually talk one-on-one for this reason. We will need to arrange some tests to find out who the father is at the right time." In that moment, everything changed. I realized it was possible that not only I, but also my father or my brother could be the father of Diana's baby. Both Diana and I were lost and confused. Dr. Hill spoke again. "I know this is hard for both of you. Can I ask if you were close before this happened?" I took a deep breath and glanced at Diana. She nodded. "Dr. Hill, we have been trying for a baby for the last few months before this happened. We were very close almost every day." Dr. Hill replied, "If that's true, there's a good chance you could be the father. But I must be honest, there is a chance that your father or brother could be the father as well." I said through gritted teeth, "That's tough to hear." Dr. Hill nodded. "I'm sorry about this. Hiding the truth won't help either of you. Can you give us a few minutes? We need to talk," I managed to say. "Of course," she replied. "I have other patients to see. I'll be back soon with what you might need. Take your time to think about what to do next." She looked at Diana. "Whatever you decide, know that the man next to you is one of the best I've seen. He's been with you when many men would have run away. I see determination in his eyes. That's hard to find." There seemed to be a story behind her words, perhaps about lost love. Diana knew she was right. I was here for her, and she chose to stand by me in this complicated situation. Dr. Hill closed the door, leaving us in silence for the next few minutes. We didn't say much and tried not to look at each other. We needed to talk, but it was hard. "How are you feeling, Diana?" "Honestly, I don't know. I just found out I'm pregnant, and I didn't see it coming. I should be happy because this is what we wanted since our honeymoon. But with everything that has happened, it's hard to feel that way." She paused and took a deep breath. "What if the baby isn't yours? I don't know. I feel the same. I'm so angry at them. I feel helpless, and I regret that I wasn't able to protect you. I keep thinking I let you down, and I worry that the baby isn't mine. I wish I could go back and prevent you from being in that situation. I don't remember much, but what I do remember was frightening. I think I felt sick a few times. I wanted you to come and rescue me. I wish I could have called for you when you were there. Now, this." She touched her flat belly, but since she was small, it wouldn't take long for people to notice she was pregnant. "What do we do, Diana? Do we keep the baby? We never really talked about having kids. We're not very religious. I don't know. I'm confused. What if the baby is yours and we decide not to keep it?" I had to agree. "What if the baby isn't mine? Does this baby not deserve love from two people who wanted one just because of something beyond our control?" Diana nodded. "Harry, if we keep the baby and find out it belongs to Greg or even Roger, how would you feel?" I didn't know how to respond. Honestly, I wasn't sure I would feel angry at first. But we want a baby and you're pregnant now. What if it takes a long time to have another baby? Or what if we can't have another baby if we don't keep this one? "Right now, we are facing so much," she said. "We feel pain. I want to believe I can move past this and hold our baby. I don't want to give up the chance to love our baby just because of how they were conceived." Diana gave me a sad smile. "You know, you just called it our baby." I smiled back. "I think this is our decision. We'll still get a paternity test when we can. But this," I said, placing my hand on her tummy, "will be our child." We talked about what this meant. Both of us felt a little uneasy, but we wanted to try. Besides, I wasn't a wanted child. I was unexpected. Even if this baby isn't mine, I want to give the love I never received. We understood it wouldn't be easy. When Dr. Hill came back, we told her our decision. I could see she was pleased. The next day, Diana left the hospital. During those first few days at home, Diana stayed close to me. She was never far away, and honestly, I didn't mind. I was working from home, but I planned to go back to the lab in a few weeks. I wondered how Diana would manage without me. Maybe I could ask Cindy or June to help her. We also had a psychologist visit us every week to support us both. There was a lot to handle, both on our own and together. We tried to be understanding, even though we often felt angrier at our family and ourselves than at each other. When it was time for me to head back to the office, I realized I had been worried for no reason. The girls were happy to support Diana, and she understood that I couldn't avoid work forever. My first day back was hard. Everyone checked in on me and asked about Diana. They didn't know everything, but they sensed something bad had happened in my family. My mother and sister were in jail while the police looked for my father and brother. When I got home, Diana hurried to be with me. She tried to act calm, but everyone could tell she was there for me. Over the next few weeks, we created a routine. Diana came to work with me a few days each week when I didn't have to be in the lab. On other days, Cindy and June came by to spend time with her about 6 weeks after what we called the situation. Diana and I renewed our wedding vows with a special evening together. It wasn't perfect, and we both felt a little shy, but we were happy and fell asleep feeling good. I was worried she wouldn't want to be close to me after everything that happened with Roger and Greg, but she just wanted to feel connected to me again. At the same time, she feared that what I had witnessed would make me pull away from her. I felt a bit off at first, and it was one of the few times I didn't start with an intimate moment. But we managed to talk and grow closer. Over the next few weeks, things started to feel normal again. The only challenge was her growing belly. When we went for a checkup at what was thought to be about 18 weeks, everything looked good, and we found out we were having a girl. I was so happy and tried to put aside my worries about who the father might be. Diana's belly was showing now, and I think she was glad to see my excitement. We decorated the nursery next to our bedroom in pinks and purples and got cute wall stickers for our daughter's room. I also realized it was time to face some family issues. I called Tim to plan a visit with my mother and sister. I hadn't seen them since that night a few weeks earlier when I was at work. Martha and Joan were charged with several offenses and had a court date in about a month. Until then, they were in jail. Roger and Greg were still out there. At first, people said they were far away, but a more recent report said they were closer to home. We had guards at home and work day and night. Diana and I each had personal panic buttons with GPS, so help could get to us quickly when we went out. We let our security team know we felt a bit nervous until Roger and Greg were caught, since they had hurt me for years and had caused trouble for Diana too. One Saturday afternoon, we found ourselves in the visiting room of the local jail. Tim came with us and waited outside with Diana while I spoke to my mother first, then my sister. Both women agreed to meet me. The room reminded me of something from a movie, with green walls and a metal table and chairs fixed to the floor. I couldn't see any one-way mirrors, but there was a camera in the corner. The officer who brought me in said they were only using video to keep everyone safe. About 5 minutes later, my mom came into the room. She was wearing brown coveralls and white shoes. She had handcuffs on, and they asked if I wanted her handcuffed to the bench too, but I said no. My mom looked different than I remembered. She seemed to have aged a lot in just a few months. Her hair was pulled back, but it was messy. Her eyes looked tired, and there were small scars on her lips. She sat down across from me, and the guard left, closing the door behind him. We just stared at each other for a moment. I wasn't sure who would speak first, but she did. "How's Diana?" I thought she would ask me about myself or say she was sorry, so her question about Diana surprised me. "She's fine. She's outside and pregnant." For a second, her expression became serious, then she relaxed. "Pregnant?" I didn't know if I should ask anything. "No, you don't. You lost every right to be my mother with everything you've done. You didn't help Diana or me. But to answer you, we don't know for sure. We hope the baby is mine, but after that night it could be Roger or Greg's too." She nodded slowly, looking very sad. "Harry?" Her voice trailed off. I filled the silence. "Honestly, I don't know if I should call you Mom or Martha now." I felt so much anger towards her. "You hurt the woman I love. I've called you much worse in the last few months. Part of me wants to call you Mom, but I just don't think you deserve it." She nodded again. "Martha is fine. And before you ask, yes, we are keeping the baby no matter what. If the baby isn't mine, I will love it completely. It will have a better life than how your husband treated me." "This child will know love." "So Diana told you then?" "Yeah, it came out. How could you, Mom? I mean, Martha, it seems everyone knew I wasn't Roger's son except me. How could you keep that secret for all those years? I thought I looked different because of your family." She looked away for a moment and wiped some tears from her face. I didn't feel sorry for her. I had tissues in my pocket, but I wouldn't give them to her. When she looked back at me, it seemed like she was thinking about what to say next. Then she made a choice. She turned to the wall and started to tell me about my real father. When I was in my late teens, I had a boyfriend named George. He was a thin guy, really smart. He made me laugh and kissed me gently. We even shared important moments together. But not long after high school, George and his family moved away. We tried to stay in touch, but we both felt it wouldn't work, so we decided to break up. Back then, not many women went to college, so I looked for a job. I ended up working for a construction company as a bookkeeper. I wasn't the best at it, but I was good enough. While working there, I caught the attention of one of the workers. Roger and George were so different. George was calm and nice, while Roger was really excited and determined. He wouldn't take no for an answer. I started dating Roger, and after about 6 months, we grew closer. Soon, I discovered I was going to have a baby, and his dad insisted we get married. So we did. Then I had Greg. Not long after that, George came back to town. By then, Roger had started his business and was always busy. George found me, and we began talking again. It felt like we were back in high school. George made me laugh in ways Roger didn't. He gave me small gifts and made me feel important. I think this, along with Roger having a few glasses of wine, led me to be with George again. Well, I ended up expecting another baby. When Roger came home, I felt really guilty. I didn't tell him right away that I had been with someone else. When you were born, Roger was so happy. He had 2 sons now and worked hard for us. But he wasn't home much, so I did my best to raise both of you. Still, I knew you weren't Roger's child. I got a DNA test that proved it. I kept that secret from George and allowed Roger to be with me again, which led to Joan being born. I felt really guilty about that. About a month after Joan was born, you started growing quickly. Roger noticed you looked different. He kept asking questions, and eventually I told him I had been with another man and you were the result. She remembered that night with dread. Roger was very angry. I think what kept me safe was Joan crying and needing to be fed. I had to sit outside your room, rocking her back and forth to keep him from coming in and hurting you. After that, he left for about a month. I never heard from him again, but the money kept coming for food and the home, so I focused on caring for all 3 of you. When he returned, he wanted things to be like before, but when it came to you, he acted cold. He wouldn't talk to you. You were only 3 years old then. Once you went to him with open arms, wanting a hug. He reached for you, but when you got close, he hurt you. I had to rush over and pick you up while you cried on the floor. I took you to your room and tried to calm you down. When I came back out, he said if I wanted to keep you safe, I had to keep you away from him. He also told me not to tell anyone. He didn't want anyone to know he felt betrayed by me, so I kept you away from him as much as I could. I think you were about 8 when I heard Roger tell Greg to let you learn to stand up for yourself. Greg took after Roger and had his mean side, which is when you started facing bullying from him. I nodded. That made sense. Roger told me if I tried to stop it, both you and I would end up on the street. So I didn't stop Greg from hurting you. If he couldn't do it for some reason, Roger made sure I was punished too. Greg would hit me until my skin was red. Later that night, Roger would hurt me in other ways. I hoped you would run away. I'm sorry to hear about what happened. You didn't fight back. You stayed quiet. I admired your strength, but it made me sad that you didn't try to get away. I think part of it was that I didn't have anyone to help me. Roger, Greg, and Joan made sure of that. I was naive to defend Greg and hide my own pain. I thought families were supposed to protect each other. I learned it was not like that in our family, not even with my own mother. When I spoke up, she just nodded and said, "You're right." She sighed and admitted she wouldn't make excuses for her actions. She said I had every right to be upset and that I deserved to know the truth. I sighed too as she went on. When you got the scholarship, I felt so relieved. Finally, you could leave our family and find your own way. I was thrilled when you started dating Diana. She was amazing. She not only cared for you, but also stood up to your father, Roger, when he tried to pressure her. A small smile crossed her face. I was proud of her that day. Very few people dared to stand up to Roger. The only other time was when you filed for your patent. He was furious when he realized what that meant. I'm really sorry about what you went through that night. It was terrible. He hurt me badly, and so did Greg and Joan. I felt trapped in my own house for almost a week. I still had to do all the chores. They called me names, too. Do you want me to feel sorry for you? I asked. She laughed, but it was not a happy laugh. No, Harry, I don't want sympathy. I'm just sharing my story. I think that's when Roger started to try and take your money. I knew Diana had once worked for him, and he had a plan for both of you. Suddenly, you had nice cars and clothes, and you looked happy without sharing your money with the family. Roger believed he had the right to your money because he helped raise you, even if you weren't his own. When you got into a fight and left, he got even angrier. He started plotting something terrible. He wanted Greg, Joan, and me to help him take Diana and make her have a child. He thought if a baby was born, he could take your money for it. But Mom, that's not fair, I said. I know, sweetie, but that was his idea. One day, when Diana came for the DNA results, Joan acted quickly. She called Roger and Greg back while she put something bad in Diana's drink. When Diana passed out, Joan slapped me, telling me to keep quiet. I feel awful for not saving Diana. When Roger and Greg came home, they hurt her. I told Mom. For the first time, I saw real tears in her eyes. They weren't for herself. Roger made all of us do terrible things. The boys took turns with Diana while she was out from the medicine. I was stuck in another room waiting for them to finish. When you came by, I hurried to put on a robe and tried to send you away. I was scared you would find out what was happening. I worried they might hurt you or Diana. I texted you when you called, hoping you would think she wasn't home. I didn't know they wanted you to find them with her like that. I am really sorry for everything. You and Diana didn't deserve any of this. It's all my fault because I was not loyal. She didn't look at me, but I noticed her brown clothes were darker now, from her tears. I think I can accept that, I said. She went on. You probably know most of what happened since you and Diana are close. I imagine you filled in a lot of the details. Yes, but I still have some questions. I will try my best to answer them. Okay. Did Roger spend time with Joan? Yes, he did. He also made Greg do things to me and made me take what they left from Joan. Please don't ask me more about that. I would rather not talk about those parts. I understand. My next question is, you mentioned you have a DNA report and a letter from my real father. Can I have them? She smiled, and for the first time in a long while, it felt warm. Yes, Harry, you can have them. I was about to get them for Diana when everything happened. They are still hidden in a secret spot at the bottom of my winter clothes drawer. If you can go to the house and ask my lawyer for permission, you can get them yourself. Sadly, I don't think I will be leaving here anytime soon. I guess not. This next question is hard for me to ask. Did I do anything wrong that made you stop caring for me? She reached out with her handcuffed hands and held mine. No, Harry. You never did anything wrong. I was the one who made mistakes. I thought that keeping my distance and taking the worst of it myself would protect you. I was wrong. I wanted to keep you safe, even if my way of thinking was not right. I love you, sweetie. I know this might not mean much to you right now, and my words may seem empty, but I truly do love you. I am so proud of everything you have done. You are much better than my husband. I may not get to say this again, but I love you and I always will. I am sorry for everything. You are my son and I messed up a lot. But if today helps you find some peace and move forward, then that's all I can ask for. After that, the conversation stopped. Mom pulled our hands back and we looked at each other for a moment. Then she stood up and walked to the door where a guard came to let her out. She looked back at me. One more thing, dear. They may have called you a mistake, but you aren't. You were born from the love between George and me. You are my greatest achievement. Even if we never talk again, I will always be proud of the man you have become. With those words, she left. I sat there for a while thinking. It seemed my mom had a tough time at home too. She was often upset just like I was, but she also dealt with awful things from my dad and my siblings. My family had deep problems, but soon enough, someone knocked on the door. Are you ready for the next one, Mr. Other? The guard asked. Yes, bring her in. If my mom looked bad, then Joan looked worse. She wore the same loose clothes as Mom. Joan sat down at the table and stared at me. Her hair was messy and short. She had a fresh cut on her cheek and looked like she hadn't slept in days. When she wasn't staring at me, she seemed to be nervously glancing around the room. This was probably a big change for her. After talking with Mom, I started to understand some of her feelings. But Joan, who was supposed to be my sister, felt like a stranger to me. I didn't start the conversation this time. You know, a lot of people here know who you are, Joan said flatly. And why should I care about that? I replied. Many of their family members work for you or your suppliers. You are pretty famous around here. Young, rich, and you helped create many jobs. People know you for helping charities, even ones that help people get back on their feet. I already know that, Joan. I work hard to help the community. After my rough childhood, I want to make a difference. If it takes time, money, or effort, I will do it. There it is. The self-centered person my family has raised. You're not even a real family member. You're so full of yourself that you don't care about us. I've been here almost a month, and once people find out I'm your sister, all I hear about is how great you are for helping others. Yet you've done nothing to help me. I tilted my head, confused by her words. Help you, Joan? After everything you did to Diana and me, why would I want to help you? If my words hurt her, she didn't show it. You're my sister. You're supposed to look out for me and use your money and power to help me. Why would I want to help you after what you did? I asked. I am your sister. Don't you care about me? Some of the people here found out what happened with Diana. They came for me at night and made me do things I never expected. I didn't want to, but I felt like I had no choice. But it's different when you're on the other side, isn't it? Joan, let me be clear. Don't ever say something bad about my wife again. You, your dad, and your brother hurt her. She is the victim here, not you, and you think I will help you? Forget that after everything you did to Diana and to me. How dare you ask for help? I laughed, and she pulled back a little. Let me remind you of something. A long time ago, when your dad was at work and your brother was too busy, you came to me for help. Do you remember that bike? It was a girl's first bike with fun streamers on the handles, a little basket, and a big loud bell. You liked to ring it. Since no one else would help you, I spent the next few weeks teaching you how to ride. Those were some of the best times of my childhood. I felt important. You were happy to have my help. For a while, I got to be a big brother, and you were like a little sister who looked up to me. We rode around the neighborhood together, just enjoying being siblings. But not long after, it seemed like your dad and brother said some things about me that changed how you felt. Suddenly, you grew cold toward me, and you stopped wanting to ride. I asked you to go for a ride for weeks, and then one day you looked at me with a scornful face and said to leave you alone if I thought you'd ride with someone like me. That afternoon, I felt like I lost my sister. Since then, it seems you didn't care that I stopped talking to you. Each time we spoke after that, it felt like we were saying things that didn't connect. Even your rude brother spoke to me directly. But you turned my love for you into something bad. That feeling faded away with your one harsh sentence, and you never thought to fix it. You can't see that you are here because of your own choices. No, Joan, I won't help you. In fact, I will make sure you spend the longest time possible for what you did. You talk about the others in here, but you should look in the mirror, and about those programs I helped fund that you mentioned earlier. Let me be clear. If any of them try to help you, I will take back my support. I stood up, ready to end our meeting. I asked for this meeting today to see if you felt any regret for everything that happened. Do you feel sorry for what you did, or do you even care about me at all? But from the moment you came in, you didn't ask about Diana. You didn't ask about me either. You didn't even try to say you were sorry. All you cared about was yourself. No, Joan, you are done in my life. Get used to these walls because you will be here for a long time. About money, you will never get a cent from me when I leave this place. If I have my way, we will never see each other again. I took a small object from my pocket and placed it on the desk. It was a little figure of a bike, like the one I taught you to ride. I will leave you with this to remember the better times when we were brother and sister learning to ride together. I will mourn the sister I lost that day. I will always remember the fun we had on our bike, but I know you will remember me for a long time. Goodbye, Joan, and stay away from me. I knocked on the door and the guard let me out. My last glance at Joan showed her looking down at a small bike figurine on the table in the waiting area. Diana and Tim were sitting quietly, chatting. They stood up when I walked over. Diana wrapped her arms around me tightly, her big, pregnant belly pressed against me. How did it go? Tim asked. In some ways, just as I expected, but in other ways, very different, I replied. I think my mother really regrets everything that happened. She never asked for help or pointed fingers at anyone else. Instead, she wants to take the blame for it all. From what she said, Roger, Greg, and Joan have hurt her more than Diana and I combined. Diana gasped. What surprised me was that her first question was about Diana. I looked down at my wife, smiling at her. Joan, on the other hand, just wanted me to free her. She didn't try to make amends or ask questions. I think Roger has filled her mind with terrible thoughts about me, and I will ensure that Joan is held responsible. I nodded toward the prison walls in my mind. She can stay there. We talked for a while, and I noticed Tim seemed like he wanted to say something important. Guys, I got a report that one of the trucks from Roger's place was stolen last night. Security cameras showed two people who looked a lot like Roger and Greg breaking in. We are on high alert, and our community watch is keeping a lookout. But please be careful over the next few days. We promised him we would be cautious, and Diana and I made sure we had our safety devices with us. I also called our security company and asked them to double the patrols around our home and office to stay safe. It had been a long and tiring afternoon talking with my mother, and Joan had worn me out. Plus, my pregnant wife Diana tires easily, so we were glad to head home. I was looking forward to a simple dinner and some time on the couch watching TV with Diana. We walked to my Mustang and I helped Diana get inside. As I did, I thought about getting a different car, something easier to use with kids. I loved my car, but it wasn't the best for family life. Maybe a Jeep or a Range Rover would work. But then I thought a four-door V8 AMG could be fun. As I started the engine, Diana asked me, "Harry, are you really done with your mother and sister?" I thought for a moment. No, I don't think things can ever be fixed. It hurts too much, and the memories won't go away. I said things I regret to someone I once cared about like family, but I can't take those words back. My mother is different. She seemed honest with me this time. If she's telling the truth, then she's been through a lot, maybe even more than us. Some things she said matched what you told me in the hospital. Then I suddenly remembered, oh, she told me where I could find the DNA report and a letter from my real father. I felt a wave of sadness. She also said that my true father was the love of her life. I wasn't sure if she truly loved Roger or if she was just with him for the kids. I had my own thoughts about Roger. Part of me wanted to understand her better. I thought she cared about us, but maybe she felt stuck. We were sitting at a red light when the moment happened. The roads were clear and we were chatting about our day. We were tired but happy to move on. Suddenly, a big truck came right at us instead of going through the light like it should have. It swerved toward us, its lights glaring on my door. I recognized Greg with a wild grin, and beside him was Roger yelling, "They say sometimes time slows down and you see flashes of your life." For me, everything did slow down, but I didn't see my past, which was a relief. It gave me a moment to react. Greg's truck was headed straight for my side. In just moments, it would crash into my door, possibly hurting me badly. It was serious. I had to act quickly. I didn't want Diana, who was sitting next to me, to get hurt. I pressed the gas pedal down hard. The Mustang roared to life, and I sped through the intersection. But it wasn't enough. The truck was going fast, and I was starting from a stop. It hit the back of my car near the rear wheel. "Hold on!" I shouted to Diana. The crash was loud, with metal screeching and plastic cracking. We spun out of control. The Mustang tried to move forward, but now we were sliding sideways. We spun around once, then twice, nearly a third time before finally stopping. Diana and I stared at each other, stunned. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" I asked. She shook her head. "I don't think I'm hurt. Are you okay?" "Yeah, I think so." I reached for my emergency button and showed it to Diana. She did the same. When we pressed the buttons, the small lights on each lit up. Hopefully, help would come soon. "It's Roger and Greg. They hit us." I turned to see where the truck ended up. It was almost right in front of us since the Mustang had turned around. We were lucky not to roll over the raised part of the road on the other side. The truck had crashed into the traffic light pole after hitting my car. I saw Roger and Greg getting out of the truck, looking a bit stunned. I wasn't sure if we should stay in the car, try to run, or talk to them. Staying inside felt safe. The windows were still intact, which surprised me after such a hard hit. My driver's side window was cracked badly, though. Running away didn't feel safe since Diana was pregnant, and I didn't want to face two men at once. Honestly, I wasn't sure I could handle even one of them. I thought it might be best to buy some time and talk to them if I got out of the car. Help might arrive before things got worse. I decided to try that. "Stay calm. Please trust me," I said to Diana. I opened the door and stepped outside, being careful to avoid the mess all around us. Parts of my Mustang and bits from the truck were scattered everywhere. I walked to the passenger side, wanting Roger and Greg to see me, but I acted like I hadn't noticed them yet. I had to stay calm and make them think I didn't know who they were. Time was on our side. I walked over to Diana's door and opened it, helping her to her feet. Then I turned to face the two troublemakers and paused. They looked relaxed but tired, their faces worn and their beards messy. Their clothes were old and torn. It seemed like they had lost a lot of weight, almost like they had given up their jobs. There was a wild look in their eyes, and that made me nervous. But what scared me the most was what they had in their hands. Each held a cheap-looking but dangerous shotgun. I moved Diana and myself behind the car door, using it as a small shield. They were still about 30 meters away, but with guns, you never know. "Well, well, well, if it isn't the error and the unwanted one. What a surprise to see you here," Greg said, pointing to my car. "Looks like you've had an accident." "Lucky us." His smile seemed friendly, but it felt dark, too. "That's enough, Greg," Roger shouted, turning to me. They were holding their guns loosely for now. "You owe me, boy. Both you and your friend. You shouldn't have gone to the police. You were supposed to listen to me, not run away, and definitely not tell the cops. After everything I've done for you, treating you like family, you owe me." "I owe you nothing," I replied, feeling my anger rise. I knew I shouldn't have responded, but I couldn't help it. "Nothing? What about all the years I took care of you, fed you, and let you live?" he shouted. I stepped closer, pushing aside the threat of their guns. My anger was boiling. I was ready to stand my ground. "And what about all the years of pain, the beatings, the bruises, the neglect? You were a terrible father." He laughed. "Haven't you figured it out? You're not my son. You never were. I let you live because of my kindness. But that was all I had to do. My wife betrayed me while I worked hard for our family. She kept it from me until it was too late. You're a mistake. Unwanted. Like trash stuck on my shoe that I can't scrape off." He waved his gun, but didn't aim it at me. When he saw my face, he noticed I wasn't shocked by his words. His eyes narrowed. "So, someone must have told you the truth. Was it your mother, or the woman next to you now? Like she's some saint. Has your wife told you she was unfaithful before you even met? How she slept with her own uncle and was unfaithful during your whole marriage?" Diana started to say something, but I couldn't help but laugh. "Wow, just wow. You are one of the saddest people I have ever met. My wonderful wife and my unfortunate mother have told me that the harsh person in front of me is not my father. Yes, Diana and I have talked about her past. I know the truth. I admire her strength, even after everything she's gone through. But I was the one who realized that you were never my dad. True fathers care for their children. Whether they are biological or not, they are part of their family. They help them grow, celebrate their achievements, and comfort them when things go wrong. So no, you were never my father. And honestly, I don't feel sad about that. But you know what's worse, Roger? What's worse is that you are so full of yourself that you can't see how you've hurt your other children, too. I know the truth, not the lies you tell. Oh, aren't you clever? But that doesn't change the fact that you still owe me something." He raised the shotgun, and I stepped out from behind the door, telling Diana to stay back while I lifted my hands. If I was going to be hurt, I wanted to protect her. "So what's this? Is this your messed-up way of trying to get money from me? If you want to scare me, then trying to kill me is a really foolish idea." He laughed. "You don't understand, do you? That baby growing in Diana is either mine or my real son's. So if you die, my child will get your money and I win. That's a foolish way of thinking. Long before all this began, I made sure you would never get any of my money. I thought you would understand why you can't have it. It's because you treated me badly my whole life. I set it up so that no one in your family could touch it if something happened to me. After you hurt Diana, I made sure my money would go elsewhere, to make sure you end up in a place where you can't hurt anyone ever again." I thought I was getting through to him, but Roger just laughed manically. He pointed at Diana, who was hiding behind the broken car door. "I was with her, we all were, but she kept it all to herself. And while you act tough, I know you're hurting inside, because we embarrassed you as a father. Your mother was part of that too. Your sister made her sick. And Greg and I made her pregnant. He stepped closer, and Diana went pale, shrinking back behind me. Roger stopped a few feet away. Face it, boy, you'll die knowing that a better man beat you. I threw my head back and laughed, feeling wild. I needed more time and had to take a risk. It could save Diana. I let out a loud laugh that filled my lungs. Roger and Greg paused, and Diana jumped, looking shocked. Roger, you are such a fool. Do you know that? That baby isn't yours or Greg's. It's mine. You hurt my beautiful wife. But she was already pregnant. We have been talking about a baby for over 2 months. She went off the pill a month before that. We were together often, and the doctors say I'm very healthy. Diana and I were together twice that day before your daughter gave her drugs. I noticed their clothes. We all know you both aren't great when it comes to romance. You might think you're good at it, but I doubt either of you could connect with a woman like my wife does. I had teased them, saying I was better in bed. I could see their anger, but there was also a bit of embarrassment on their faces. I spotted lights in the distance, but I wasn't sure they would arrive in time. I was about to do something risky. I raised my hand as they pointed their guns at me. "Wait, stop!" I said, trying to sound calm but a bit wild. They lowered their guns a little, but I couldn't resist taking another shot. "Roger, did your mom need help to have Greg and Joan?" I heard my real father gave her everything she needed. They said he was quite charming. She really liked him. I guess you don't do much to please her. I smiled, knowing Roger just needed a little push before he would break, and I had to act quickly. "I heard you were so bad that she needs a lot of help. It surprised me because you don't seem very impressive. A son shouldn't know too much about his mom's life. But I found out this afternoon that you struggle to please a woman even when she wants you close. When Mom gets out of prison, she might leave you to find my real father, George." I had stirred them up like I wanted, keeping their focus away from Diana. Roger raised his gun at me, and Greg tried to do the same. George Daniels isn't half the man I am. He's not very sharp. But once I'm done with you, I'll know who to go after next. His finger pulled the trigger, and I jumped to the side. He thought I would move away from Diana, but instead, I lunged straight at him, landing among some car parts on the ground. I got hit by some pellets. My right shoulder and back hurt badly, but I couldn't stop. Our lives might depend on what I did next. I needed to get out of his reach. I landed in a pile of car parts, including a piece from a rear wheel. Without thinking too much, I grabbed that part and threw it at where I thought Greg was. Greg fired his gun, but he missed me. I didn't hit him hard, but I knocked the gun out of his hand. He needed a moment to recover. I knew I had only a short time left, so I took the next piece I could reach, which was part of my broken Mustang's tailpipe. If you've seen them, they have sharp metal edges sticking out. I was now very close to Roger. I held the tailpipe tightly and pointed it at him. By then, Roger had loaded another bullet and aimed it right at my face as I stood up. He wanted to end it. "Goodbye, boy," he shouted. I lifted the tailpipe just as he pulled the trigger. The shot missed me but went off right next to my left ear. Let me tell you, shotguns are loud. I had no time to think. I had to act because danger was very close. Now I was right in front of the shaky Roger. I pushed him back with the tailpipe. He fell to the ground, and I kept moving. I pointed the sharp end down like a spear. This man had tried to ruin my life and hurt everyone I cared about. I was ready to end this with all the pain and anger I had felt for years. I aimed with all my strength. Roger looked shocked as he saw what was coming. His shotgun was too far away for him to grab, and even if he could, it wouldn't help him since it had no bullets in it. My anger was strong. Roger knew this was the end for him. The moment felt slow, like the crash before, and I could see the finish line approaching. But just as I was about to strike down with my makeshift spear, I was hit hard from the side. Greg had dropped his gun and charged at me, throwing me off balance. As I rolled away, I saw lights approaching for help, but I still worried if they would get here in time. I found myself facing 2 people again, and I was unsure if I would escape alive, but at least Diana would be safe. I felt dizzy from my shoulder and back injury. Greg was back on his feet and looked very angry. Big mistake. I was ready to fight. I would take him down before he knew what hit him. I wasn't sure how to get past him. Greg was almost double my size even after running away for a few months. I was hurt and bleeding. My only advantage a moment ago was that he didn't see me coming. Plus, Greg was a skilled fighter. I felt hopeless. He was just waiting for me to stand up because he knew he could hurt me again. But then luck turned in my favor as I put my hand down. I found Roger's abandoned shotgun. A spark of hope filled me as I stood up, picked it up, and loaded the next shell. I aimed it at Greg. He charged at me, snarling with something sharp in his hand. "Forget you, Greg," I shouted and pulled the trigger. He never saw it coming, and the pellets hit him in the chest. He collapsed. I moved to aim the gun at Roger and saw he had passed out. My shot hadn't hit him in the chest, but instead injured his right arm near the shoulder. Blood began to pool around him as he looked like he was going into shock. Well, good for him. Cars were racing toward us now, and they would arrive any moment. I stumbled back to Diana and found her lying on her side, gasping for air, blood spreading around her. Her eyes were unfocused, and her breathing was getting weaker. Her back was covered in wounds from the shotgun during the fight. It seemed she had also been hurt. I couldn't tell how bad her injuries were. There were many cuts on her back that were bleeding. Luckily, the car door had protected her lower half and the baby, but she was still hurt. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't help her. I felt my energy fading with every move I made. My shoulder was hurt too, and my back had cuts. I collapsed beside her, feeling completely worn out. I think she felt me near her. She knew it was me and not the others. I helped her rest her head in my lap. For a brief moment, our eyes met, and we looked deeply at each other. No words were needed, and it felt like that moment lasted forever as we stared at one another. I felt nothing but love flowing between us. She was my other half. I felt like I belonged to her completely, but I didn't know how to help her. She lifted a bloody hand to touch my cheek softly. Her touch was gentle as tears streamed down her face. "Harry, I love you," she said before closing her eyes. My daughter was born just a few hours after the fight when both Diana and I had been shot. The stress of the accident made her arrive early. I wasn't there for the birth because I was in surgery. They were removing shotgun pellets from my shoulder and back and fixing my shoulder. I was in surgery for over 12 hours and didn't wake up for more than 2 days. I lost consciousness just before our security team reached us. The ambulance arrived shortly after, and we were quickly taken in for surgery. I learned later that Diana was in surgery for about 20 hours. Her labor lasted just 3 hours, and thankfully it went quickly, even though it was very stressful. After giving birth, Diana was taken for surgery to remove the pellets and to treat her wounds from the fight. I missed seeing Greg shoot Diana again while I was struggling with Roger. The shot hit her in the back while she was trying to hide behind the door. Then Greg saw me knock Roger down and came for me before I could help her. Diana almost didn't make it 3 times during surgery. Though her injuries were serious, they were not life-threatening. She lost a lot of blood during childbirth and felt very weak. I was the first to wake up. We were in separate beds in the same room we had been in before. There were 5 other people in the room with us, not counting the doctors on the couch across the room. Jack and Cindy were curled up asleep by Diana. June was watching over them, and Norman sat in a chair between our beds reading something. But what caught my attention was someone in an orange jumpsuit holding my hand. It was my mother. She was handcuffed to the bed with her head resting against my mattress, but she held on tightly to my hand. I wasn't sure how to feel, but I knew I had to say something first. "Water," I tried to say, but it came out as a quiet groan. Still, it woke everyone up, and soon they were all around me. Then Dr. Hill entered the room. Someone must have called her. "Harry, welcome back. Can you look into the light for me, please?" She said she checked on things and looked happy to see me waking up. They gave me a small cup of water, and I took a sip. "Diana," I managed to say. Dr. Hill gave me a little smile. "She's in the bed to your right. She's still asleep, but we believe she'll get better soon, after the successful delivery and surgery." Everyone in the room smiled at that. "Harry, you're now a father of a tiny, beautiful little girl. Congratulations, she is in the special care unit. You should be able to see her in a few days." After she left, my family came to my bed. I saw their worried expressions, but I could also feel their happiness that Diana and I were okay. They seemed upset about what happened to us. After a few jokes about how I looked like I had been through a fight, we all laughed. My mom asked, "What happened, sweetie?" I told them, "A few hours after you left the prison, I got a message that you had an accident." I explained how Roger and Greg hit us with their truck after we left. They must have been waiting for the right moment. I shared the details about the fight, how I shot Greg when he came at me, and how I hurt Roger when he missed. Then I told them how I found Diana by the car and fell down. I looked over at Diana in her hospital bed. She was awake and looking at me with tears in her eyes. Jack quickly went to find Dr. Hill, who returned to check on Diana. No one interrupted Dr. Hill, but Diana kept her gaze on me. When she learned that our baby girl was born, tears flowed down her face. Her voice was soft. She vaguely remembered the delivery and didn't know about our baby making it. Does anyone know what happened after Diana and I passed out? Norman spoke up. I think I can help. I got to the scene about 10 minutes after the first responders. He continued, I was told that both of you pressed your panic buttons and that a team was on the way. When I got there, you and Diana were being lifted onto stretchers. It was chaotic. The police finished their investigation this morning. I think Tim will want to talk to both of you later to go over everything. They still have the intersection blocked off. Once you were stable in the ambulances, you were brought here for care. I stayed with the team at the scene knowing you were getting good help. June, Jack, and Cindy met you both here and haven't left your sides. You might have heard your Mustang is completely wrecked. There was a lot of blood, shotgun pellets, and car parts everywhere. When people heard about the accident, the fight, and the shotguns, the media went crazy. And when they found out it was local hero Harry, our city's youngest millionaire, they were frantic. I've been getting calls from the media all day. I've even had movie studios reach out. They want to buy the rights. Even with my injury, I laughed a bit. Diana chuckled too. Who would want to buy the story of my life? It hasn't been easy, and it's so sad, I wondered. Norman, what about Roger and Greg? Norman stopped for a moment and looked at Martha. My mom nodded. Greg died right there. The ambulance tried to help him, but his injuries were too serious. The police have some ideas about what happened. I don't think they will charge you since it looks like you acted in self-defense. Our lawyers are already checking into it. There's a traffic camera that caught most of it. The video isn't great, but it matches what you just told us. I'm sure the police will want to talk to you about it. I nodded. I had really disliked Greg, and I wanted him to pay for all the hurt he had caused me. But I wasn't sure how I felt about being the one who ended his life. Surprisingly, it was my mom who helped me with this. I was handcuffed to my hospital bed, and a police officer was standing outside. Harry, don't blame yourself. It was always going to be you or him. I am sad I lost a son. I know he got what he deserved, and I also know you are still alive. When you told us what happened, even though I cared for Greg, I think I would have done the same thing to save you. She started to cry, and I held her hand tight. Mom, why are you here? She wiped her tears, but still sobbed. Norman and Tim suggested it. I'm set to be sentenced next month. But when I heard you and Diana were in surgery, they asked if I would come see you before my court date. I hate what we did to you and Diana. I meant it when I said I would carry this shame forever. But when they brought you in, I lost control. So they brought me here. She lifted her handcuffed hands and leaned closer. I'm so sorry for everything I did. I'm sorry to you too, Diana. I wish I had been the mother you both needed. I should have protected you from Roger, from Greg, from Joan. I should have left with you both and told them to go away. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I will always love you. Now that you're both awake, I'll ask them to take me back. Before I could think, I raised my hand with the IV line hanging from my wrist. This was going to be hard. Mom, I forgive you. I know we have a lot to deal with, and our family may never be the same, but I forgive you. She cried. I could see that it was more than she hoped for, and I was surprised I was ready to forgive. As I thought about everything people had shared with me in the last few months, I realized something important. My mom had also gone through a lot because of Roger and his kids. She had been hurt and scared. She felt she had to do what he said to protect herself and keep me safe. She was forced to be with two of her children in a very wrong way and even went to jail for her part in it all. I felt that I should try to forgive her. What about Roger? Norman seemed to smile when he answered. Well, he's still alive, but he lost his right arm and a lot of blood after you hurt him with that car part. He has already had 2 surgeries and will need 2 more because his arm is infected. The police are also watching him, so he may never be free again. My mom spoke up again. I talked to my lawyer. Once Roger gets better, I plan to divorce him. He cheated on me, treated me badly, and there are other reasons too. I'm not sure what will happen in court, but I should have done this a long time ago. I know I still have to serve time in prison, but at least I won't have to deal with him anymore. I never really loved him. I stayed because of the kids. I didn't know how to leave. The divorce might not give me much, but it will set me free in a way. Just then, June handed me a manila envelope. Inside was a folded piece of paper and another envelope. "Is this for me?" I asked. June nodded and added, "Mom said to give this to you when the police brought her here while you were asleep. Martha asked me to find these for you." I looked at my mom and she gave me an encouraging nod. Everyone watched as I opened the DNA test results. I felt confused about what I was reading. My degree was in chemistry, not biology, so I decided to put it away for now and could ask someone for help later. The next thing was a letter. I opened it and began to read. "Harry, if you are reading this, you have been told that Roger is not your real father. My name is George Daniels, and I need you to know that I am your true father. Your mother and I dated in high school, but life took us in different directions. We met again for a short time, and that is when you were conceived. Your mother was already married and had a child, so we decided to end our relationship. I hope to watch you grow from afar. I would like to meet you someday and introduce you to my family. I hope you are proud of us. We are smart and hardworking. We all enjoy a good challenge, and I hope you will get that from me. Harry, you are my first child, and I don't know if you have any siblings by the time you read this. If you do, I hope we can all meet together. You will always be in my heart. Much love, always, your father, George Daniels." I felt like I had been going back and forth between anger and sadness for these last few months. Tears filled my eyes, but this time they were tears of joy. I finally had a real father. I showed the letter to my mom, and she cried too. Then I called over Jack and Norman to show them the letter. A few months ago, Diana had mentioned George's name, and I felt like Jack confirmed it. "Harry, George is my older brother. There's a big age gap, but that's definitely his handwriting. So this means I'm your uncle." I looked at Norman. "That makes you my second cousin." I felt grateful for both of them since they had helped me in high school. "I've always thought of you as family." "Wow, I can't get away with anything now," I joked. We all laughed. Mom looked at Jack in surprise. "George is your older brother?" Jack nodded. For a few minutes, we listened to them share stories about the George they knew. Soon after, Tim walked in with another officer. It was time to take my mom back to prison. She looked at Diana and then at me, waiting to be unchained and handcuffed. "I can't explain how proud I am of both of you. I promise I will work hard every day to find forgiveness." Diana surprised everyone by asking Martha for a hug before she left. After that, everyone else began to leave too. Now that the emergency was over, for the first time in a long time, I felt like things would be okay. Around 7 in the evening, we got another surprise. 3 nurses and Dr. Hill wheeled in a small crib for babies. Inside was our daughter. One nurse helped me out of bed and brought my IV to the crib, while another helped Diana. Then they gave us a few minutes alone. It was hard to hug, but being close made us both feel a lot better. "Charlotte," Diana said as we watched our baby sleep. It was the second name we liked best. Beth was our favorite name, but seeing our little girl sleep with her sensors and breathing tube made us feel Charlotte was the perfect name. That's how she got her name. As we held hands, we knew she was ours. Not just as parents, but also by blood. I couldn't even touch her yet, but I knew she wasn't Roger's or Greg's child. She was mine. The next month was tough. Diana and I had a lot to heal from. There were many things to finish, and we needed to care for our tiny baby. Charlotte, or Charlie as we called her, would stay in the special crib for up to 3 months. During this time, her lungs needed to grow strong so she could breathe on her own. It might take another 2 months before she could leave the hospital and come home with us. Diana and I were so happy when Charlie was taken off the breathing machine. We held our little girl for the first time, and it felt amazing to show our thanks. Norman and I made a big donation to the ward for premature babies. We also got the DNA results that confirmed what Diana and I already felt deep down. I was Charlie's father while we were healing. Jack came to visit with his son, George. Diana and I were surprised to see how much George looked like us. We also noticed the family resemblance between Jack and me. George seemed wise and calm. He told us he had followed my career quietly but didn't want to get involved before now. George had lost his wife to cancer 3 years ago. He had a son and a daughter and promised to introduce us when we got home. His kids already knew about me, so there would be no surprises. I felt a bit nervous about meeting them because my last two siblings had been tough on me. However, when I met them, we quickly became friends. My half-sister Megan came to work for Norman and me a year later in public relations, and now she leads our public image. My half-brother George Jr. worked as a researcher at a university. He loved to share a glass of wine and talk about new ideas. Before we left the hospital, we had to go to a court hearing for my family. The hospital staff, including Dr. Hill, Norman, Jack, George, June, and Cindy, took Diana and me there. We had security with us the whole time. We sat at the back of the courtroom. We might have needed to speak as witnesses since we were part of the case. My arm was in a sling and my back was really itchy, but I was doing okay overall. Diana had some back pain too, but it was starting to get better. The three people on trial came in one by one. Roger and Joan had public defenders, but I had kept one of my lawyers to assist my mother. The judge tapped his gavel and started the hearing. He thanked everyone for being there and reminded us that this was a closed court. He explained that we would talk about serious matters, and because of this, we needed to be careful. He noted that each of the three people on trial had their own lawyers and wanted to be tried separately. The judge asked if the prosecution agreed. An elderly man with several helpers stood up and replied to the judge. They did agree. This was a criminal trial, not a civil case. It was the state against the accused. First was Joan. She looked a little better than the last time I saw her, but still not great. She wore a simple suit, like one you might find in a thrift store, and had no makeup on. She looked at me a few times. The first time she seemed surprised to see me. The second time she looked angry when she noticed I wouldn't help her. Later, while the judge read his decision, she continued to stare at me, but I couldn't figure out what she felt. The lawyers talked about the charges and explained what they meant. Diana was called as a witness, but our legal team had already prepared a statement, which the judge accepted along with all the evidence given. "How does the accused plead?" the judge asked. Joan's public defender stood with her and said, "On behalf of my client, I have been told to plead not guilty." The judge wrote this down. Next, it was my mother's turn. The prosecution talked about the details of her past, including the affair that led to my birth. Her defense brought up the abuse she suffered from Roger, Greg, and Joan. Still, my mother did not deny what happened with my wife. She looked at us several times but didn't say anything. With all the evidence presented, the judge asked again, "How does the accused plead?" My mom and her lawyer stood up and the lawyer said, "On behalf of my client, I have been told to plead guilty." The judge noted this. Then it was my former father's turn. He looked hurt, with a bandaged arm, and walked with a limp. He wore prison clothes instead of a suit. He glared at us as he took his seat. The lawyer started again, but I could see that his public defender seemed not very interested. The public defender turned red as the charges were read. He had heard of assault and attempted murder, but hearing about other charges, like incest and trying to harm his own son, shocked him. One surprising thing my mom asked was to settle their divorce during this hearing. She said that they wouldn't live together again and would probably be in prison for a long time, so it made sense to finish things up. The judge agreed after hearing the evidence against my mom and Roger. There wasn't much to defend Roger. A few prepared statements were read, and it didn't look good for him, even when they talked about why the divorce was happening. The evidence made Roger look like a bad person. "How does the accused plead?" asked the judge. Roger and his lawyer stood up. "On behalf of my client, I say he pleads not guilty." "Noted," replied the judge. "The court will take a break until 3 this afternoon when I will announce the decision and punishment." He hit his gavel and left. George was waiting for us outside, and he and Norman took us to a small cafe that looked a bit worn down. They said it had the best toasted sandwiches and milkshakes. George mentioned that he had taken Norman out for lunch there when they were kids, along with our hospital and security team. The place was almost full, but the guys were right. The toasted sandwiches were great. Finally, at 3, we all headed back to the courthouse. The judge returned and called us to order. This case has clear bad guys and victims. However, there are also some good people who don't get enough credit. Today, we have heard many stories about those connected to the 3 accused here, and I must say, it has been hard for me to decide what is fair and what punishment is right for each of them. On one side, we have a family that could be torn apart by a wife's betrayal. The effects of this may last for a long time. On the other side, the family reacted with violence and abuse instead of just separating, which is what any normal family would do. When we think about how people were manipulated over a long time and the threats made to lives, including those of children, it is shocking. This behavior has led to at least one death. Each accused person has asked to be tried and sentenced separately. This has happened, and my decisions today reflect that. I ask that the accused and their lawyers stand. In the case of the State versus Joan, this court finds you guilty of all charges and sentences you to at least 12 years in prison. You won't be eligible for early release for at least 8 years because you do not show regret for your actions. I will send a letter for assessment to the parole board to consider when reviewing you for early release. In the case of the State versus Martha, this court finds you guilty of all charges except for mental cruelty against Mrs. Diana and Mr. Harry. The court recognizes your guilty plea and acceptance of your actions. I also have a sworn statement from your son, Mr. Harry, and your daughter-in-law, Mrs. Diana, confirming your good character. When the truth came out, the final court decision was made. This court understands the pain and struggles you faced while living in that house. So, Mrs. Martha Other will spend 5 years in prison, with the option to apply for early release after 1 year. As for you, Mr. Roger Other, this court finds you guilty of all charges. You will be sentenced to life in prison with no chance for early release because your actions toward your wife, Mr. Harry Other, and your late son were very cruel and hurtful. In closing, I want to acknowledge the bravery of Mr. Harry Other and Mrs. Diana Other. Through the evidence we heard, we saw the many traps set against them, yet they stood together when it would have been easy to walk away. They chose to stick together, and we are thankful to have them with us. Bailiff, please take the defendants into custody. The judge's gavel struck down, marking the end of the trial, and the decisions were made. A few months later, we finally brought Charlotte home. That afternoon, we held a big party at our house. Our friends, some co-workers, and almost all of George's family came to celebrate. Everyone agreed that Charlotte was the most adorable baby. We visited my mother once a month, sometimes bringing Charlotte with us. My mom was in a low-security prison and was overjoyed to hold her granddaughter. Each visit brought tears of joy as she embraced Charlotte, trying to make up for lost time. Mom began working with support groups in prison to help herself and others facing similar challenges. When she finished her year and was released, we threw another big party to welcome her home. It felt strange. Growing up, my mother had always kept her distance, but now free from Roger's influence, she was kind and loving. She hugged and kissed me whenever she could. She stayed with Diana and me for 2 years afterward, which was a big help. Charlotte was just over a year old when we learned Diana was pregnant again. Having Grandma around was wonderful. After her release, Mom visited Joan every couple of months. However, I heard that Joan was still focused on herself, and my mom grew tired of her blame and excuses. She never wanted to see Roger again, and I also heard he had a hard time in prison. I got to know George very well. We both loved to learn, and even though I didn't call him Dad, we had a strong bond. He spent a lot of time at our home. At first, I thought it was just about me. But one night, when Diana was close to having our second child, I saw George quietly leaving my mom's room, and I couldn't help but laugh. After the court case, Jack and Cindy got engaged. Soon, Diana gave birth to our son, Harry Jr. Jack and Cindy got married when he was 3 months old. I was Jack's best man, and Diana was Cindy's maid of honor. Charlotte looked so cute as the flower girl. We learned soon after the wedding that Cindy was going to have a baby, so they would welcome their first child within 6 months of getting married. Life was settling down nicely as work improved. I finally finished the new parts of the project. We needed to work together better. It had been over a year since I started it, and completing it felt fantastic. Our business also grew, and more companies wanted to buy our products. Diana and I continued to support one another. Like all couples, we had our disagreements. Sometimes we bickered over little things, like a messy kitchen or forgetting to pick up milk. But we never let our anger get in the way of talking things out. One funny trick we learned was to lighten the mood during a disagreement. If we were arguing, we would change into comfortable clothes before we continued. We found that being more relaxed helped us talk calmly about what was really bothering us. After everything we went through in the beginning, we did face some difficulties with sharing our feelings. It wasn't really a trust issue, but sometimes we touched on sensitive topics that could upset either of us. One good thing was that Diana liked to stay close to me. Within 5 minutes away was ideal for her. We kept visiting a counselor for years. The offer from the studios was real, and a TV studio turned our story into a drama. I liked the actor who played me. He was much stronger than I, but still managed to look a bit goofy. They did a great job capturing Diana's character, too. We used the money we earned each year to support programs that help people affected by violence. We learned that not only men can hurt women, it can happen the other way around, too. We wanted to help those who were suffering. One Saturday morning, years later, we sat down to plan Charlotte's 10th birthday party. My mom walked in looking a bit sad. She had George with her, and I could see they were becoming close. Maybe my mom and dad could start seeing each other again. But then again, anything is possible. "What's wrong, Mom? You look really down," I said. "Someone passed away, and honestly, I'm not sure I care," she replied. "Was it Roger?" Diana asked. Mom just nodded. "You know what, Mom? Think about the good times. We've all moved on from the hard moments. He tried to pull us apart, but he actually made us stronger together." "That's the problem, Harry. I can't remember any good times with Roger. And that makes me sad. I wasted so much time. Life is never fair," she said, quoting one of Roger's old sayings. Later that evening, I lay in bed waiting for my beautiful wife to join me. When she came in, I was excited to see her. She still looked lovely, even after having 2 kids. I admired her, and I was so happy to be with her. She laughed. "Well, hello there," noticing my happiness. "You never stop surprising me, Diana," I said. "How so?" she replied. "Even after everything we've been through, both good and bad, your eyes still light up for me. Most people would have left, but you are still here. Do you know why, my dear?" she asked. "My money," I joked. She laughed. "No, my lovely personality," she said with a smile. "Nope. Then it must be my skills in the other room." "That's a bit strange," she paused to think. "Well, that's true, but no." "Okay, you tell me," I said. "Harry, you never ran away when things were tough. You always came to me, so I will always come to you. No woman has been luckier than I am." I smiled, but then frowned. Life keeps throwing things at us, both good and bad, doesn't it? "Are you feeling down because of the news about Roger?" she asked. "I guess so. From being a kid to meeting you, starting the company, and everything around Charlie's birth, Roger was there in some way. I disliked him, but a part of me wished he could have cared for me like a father. Now he's gone. Don't think that way, my love. Don't compare him to you. You faced every challenge he gave you. You not only faced them, but grew stronger. And unlike him, you got the girl. When your wife tells you that, you're right. You should never argue, especially when she shows you just how much she cares for the next hour." Thanks for listening to One Infidelity Hit. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop us a like.